If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 1, Past Life. MC's POV. Survival of the fittest. It is a concept of natural selection in the field of evolutionary biology that states that the organisms best adapted to their environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. Well, I suppose that's at least what the scientific or textbook definition suggests. However, I have a couple problems with the said theory. The major one being misinterpretation brought by humanity is that, only the fittest strong, will survive. But in reality, it is those who do survive that are deemed the fittest strongest. Yet, if Mother Nature wants to foo *k up with you, trust me, it will. Even if you are the mighty dinosaur, you have no choice but to be screwed over, regardless of your size. In essence, it's Mother Nature that determines whether a being survives or kicks the bucket, not the other way around, and especially not us humans. Now, coming to my second problem, is the exploitation made by humanity with the theory. Being a human myself and also part of modern society, we often misuse the phrase survival of the fittest, to justify our actions of oppression towards our fellow race, simply deeming them as weak and unfortunate. However, we often tend to look away from the fact that our actions mirror another phrase, the law of the jungle. Then again, if we consider that society is akin to a jungle, it might be application. Big brother, are you sure it's not hurting? An abrupt halt to my profound contemplation on the meaning of life was brought about by a familiar voice, snapping me out of my dazed state, just as I was on the verge of gaining enlightenment. For a moment, I set aside the book I had been holding. I found myself reclined in a hospital bed with my left leg securely bandaged and suspended in the air, tethered to a nearby pole as a testament to my recent injury. Deciding to ignore the rather comical position I was in, I shifted my attention to the owner of the voice, a middle school girl. She had long brown hair, neatly tied into twin tails, and was seated comfortably at the edge of the bed, right beside my injured leg. In her hand, she held a sketch and was finishing a smiley emoji on my white bandage straps, just below the heartfelt message she had already written. Get well soon, big brother. As the message indicated, she was indeed my beloved younger sister, Komaki. Komaki Hikigaya. Now, you might wonder why I am sharing all of this. Well, you will soon find out. Not at all, sis. Even if there was any pain, I'd endure it with everything I have for Komaki's happiness. Contrary to my assumptions and the fears that welled up in my heart due to the current circumstances I found myself in, my response flowed naturally, as if it were part of the unspoken pact between us. Hachiman Hikigaya, that's kinda creepy to say to your little sister. Komaki responded with a playful grin, faking a disgusted tone while completing the smiley emoji. If my mind were in its usual space, I might have rebuked her words in the same way I always did. However, her abrupt use of my full name caught my attention. Yeah, it's me, alright. Hachiman Hikigaya. A typical Japanese teenager, self-proclaimed loner and convinced that I am the only person in this world who is questioning weird societal norms and the complexities of human interactions. However, yesterday, everything I believed I knew about myself and the people around me was shattered after my involvement in an accident. No. It's not what you think. I survived. No memory loss either. In fact, on the contrary, I have gained extra memories. Yet, instead of losing memories, as in typical drama shows, I received memories. Memories of my past life? I wonder if these memories are really of my past life. The reason behind this doubt is that I don't exactly remember much about the so-called past life, except for the experiences I received and a bunch of other stuff. Yet, all I am able to remember are the experiences of my things and hazy recollections of my likes, dislikes, interests, stories, books and novels I have read, movies and shows I have watched, games I have played, and beyond all that. Peaceful experiences. Now that I have decently schemed through them, it seems my passion for games and storytelling was rather intense. The reason behind such a conclusion is the vast collection of memories related to that particular subject compared to others. The crucial word here is was, as I am unsure if it remains the same now. However, apart from that, everything else is quite messed up. I don't remember my name, age, origins, occupation, or what I used to do to survive. I know I have parents, friends, and colleagues, but I don't remember the depth of bond I have with them and nothing else. However, the most important and crazy fact I have learned among the hundreds and thousands of experiences I have received is that Hachiman Hikigaya was actually a fictional character from an anime show called My Teen Romantic Comedy SNAFU. Wishlist, it was an adaptation of a light novel with the same title, though I didn't have any experience of ever reading it. Though I can't say the same when it comes to the anime, as I was kinda obsessed with it. Well, at least that's what I could assume and understand from these small recollections, particularly with a character. Still, the memories of the show are diluted, except for a few major scenes and the main characters' personalities. This way, my entire time, from the moment I opened my eyes in the hospital, my mind was in a constant battle of truth and lies. At one point, I even assumed I might have gone insane. Anyway, even with all the messed up situation I am in now, if there is one thing that I am glad about and am damn certain about, it is. Luckily. Luckily. I was a guy in my previous life too. How, I am so certain you ask. Well, I just know. There is a particular genre where I have an abundance of knowledge about everything I have read, watched, and played. You get what I mean, right? Right? So I was dude, just like I am now. And also, a virgin. Fu *ck, my accursed luck. On second thought, I am grateful for not remembering my past life's age. At least I can fool myself into thinking that I died early. However, what why the long face, big brother? Komaki, who was patiently expecting a reply from me, commented, interrupting my train of thought again. Was I making a long face? Shoo. I think there are a lot of things I need to work on myself. Otherwise, I might end up being a handful, even for myself. It's nothing. Anyway, you skipped school today. I casually brushed it off and inquired as I noted her casual attire. What can I do? I have such an unreliable big brother. Who told you to be a loner? I bet no one will visit you if I leave now. So this little sister of yours had to sacrifice her school life. Her voice, which initially started off with concern, shifted to one of sacrifice in the end. KRSSHT. Imaginary stab. Her words felt like a direct stab through my heart. Being bullied for my loner status by my very own sister? On top of that, I have no way to retaliate to her words either. Apart from Komaki, only my parents paid me a visit. Given their perpetually busy schedules, I doubt I will see them again for another couple of days. Damn it, at least visit me every day. Sigh, my high school life was indeed turning out to be the worst. I had hoped that high school would be different from middle school and that I could get rid of my loner status. I wanted to make new friends, blend seamlessly with my classmates, and leave my past behind. However, I was reminded of how things worked in this world, a world that I had assumed I was already numb to. Yet, it seemed that the teenage hormones coursing through me were stronger than I had initially calculated. My mistakes had given me a broader perspective, and I wouldn't let my guard down again, no matter what. But first, there is something I need to address. Hey Komaki! Chapter 2, New Me. Continuation. Hikigaya Hachiman's POV, MC. Yet, it seemed that the teenage hormones coursing through me were stronger than I had initially calculated. My mistakes had given me a broader perspective, and I wouldn't let my guard down again, no matter what. But first, there is something I need to address. Hey Komaki! Your brother is a loner by choice. Not because of my circumstances. That's a lie. A fabrication concocted by my past self to evade the harsh truth of being outcast since elementary school, despite his best attempts to blend in and form connections with those around me. He was bullied psychologically for much of his life. Reasons? None. Wait a moment. Before that, did I just casually refer to myself in the third person? That oddity didn't feel odd at all. In fact, it felt like a surprisingly natural thing to do. Interesting. Anyway, to the matter at hand, there aren't any specific reasons why he, my counterpart, was singled out. Yet, he was consistently excluded or marginalized by his fellow peers without any clear reason. The situation I am describing is not uncommon and can be attributed to various factors such as social dynamics, peer pressure, and the need for conformity among children. It's often referred to as peer rejection or social exclusion. In short, I am a loner because I was molded to be one, not by choice. Come on, who would want to be an outcast by their own will? At least my counterpart didn't want to, nor does the current me. I continued. And I don't mind being alone. This one, right here, is the truth among the many flask words I have just spoken. Mind you, there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. Solitude is a conscious choice, whereas loneliness is a circumstance. So again, in short, even the current me doesn't really hate the feeling of being alone. Peacefully living one's own life, with very few chosen to disturb you. What wouldn't I do to achieve that ultimate goal? So don't mind me and attend your school tomorrow. I solidified my situation. I will, big brother. I know you wouldn't want Komaki to skip school because of you. She agreed, emphasizing that she shares my perspective. You get it, Komaki. With that out of the way, I returned my attention to the book I was holding, only to once again contemplate my current inwardly turbulent situation, unlike my outward appearance. Yesterday was supposed to be just another ordinary day, much like any other day I spent attending high school as a first-year student. Nothing significant. It had already been a few months since my rather futile attempt to lay the groundwork for my goal of leading a normal life, or at least, as normal as I could muster. And without any surprise, I failed miserably. I simply couldn't find a way to fit in with what society deems youthful or normal. Well, what do you expect? Not knowing the reason behind the bullying I faced made me only turn into the exact thing that is full of reasons to be an outcast. My body language changed, and I started blabbering to myself. Unknowingly, a gloomy aura surrounded me, and more importantly, I had a pair of dead fish eyes that made anyone feel creepy under them. Yet there are a few positive traits triggered by the same solitude, like finding faults in others, observing human behavior keenly, and deep understanding of my surroundings, on top of a couple useless skills like accurate shooting with a gun and feigning sleep. Wait, can those even be called positive traits? Anyway, coming back to the scenes after my failure of my plan, I was indifferent, or at least that's what I tried to be, and I continued my boring and uneventful high school career the way I always have. Just like back in middle school. But then, something unexpected happened yesterday. It was an incident that made the word boring non-existent in my dictionary for the rest of my life. And why wouldn't it? I mean, when you were suddenly thrust into something unimaginable. A situation that seemed to provide irrefutable evidence that my life up until now had unfolded exactly to the script of a fictional creation from my past life? Nonetheless, I am not totally lost in it though. For whatever reason that is. Maybe because I am somehow certain of that, even though I might have lived my life until now in the exact manner described in the anime plot based on the vague memories I can recall. I really don't care, because I know the decisions I have made were my own, unaffected by anyone. Even if, by some twist of fate, my future decisions happen to align with the plot, I again don't care. However, I doubt that will happen. Because I am definitely not the same person I was 2 days ago. No matter what, receiving my past life memories and being myself from another perspective has led to a subtle shift in my thought process and attitude. Returning to my current situation, luckily I am still in the very early part of the plot, where an incident takes place in the series. Coincidentally, it's also the same incident that turned my life upside down in the show. I can still vividly recall the day when Hachiman Hikigaya meaning me was on my way to Sobu High School yesterday and got struck by a black car while attempting to rescue a dog belonging to a pivotal character in the show. This event is a significant part of my backstory, one that was unveiled later in the story. It was the moment when the three main characters crossed paths with one another, whether directly or indirectly. If I were to consider myself the victim, the girl in the car would be the unintentional perpetrator, and the girl desperately trying to retrieve her dog from the road would be the cause of it all. The entire scene revolved around me, at its center. Ironically, it really is a perfect start to what could have been an ideal rom-com narrative. K. I could have lost my life that day. I can't remember ever aspiring to be a hero. In fact, I am pretty sure I despised the very idea. That day is etched into my memory, clear as daylight. I was strolling alongside my bicycle on the bustling road leading to Sobu High School when my attention was captured by an orange-haired girl. She was desperately calling out to her dog, which had strayed into the busy street, dangerously close to the oncoming traffic. For someone who usually maintains an apathetic facade and scoffs at societal norms, something within me stirred. An instinct to help. Before I knew it, I had begun to hurtle towards them at full speed. Just as I reached the dog, ready to scoop it up into my arms, I was jolted by the deafening screech of tires and the impact of a car hitting me from the side and throwing me into the air as my vision blurred. Amid the haze of agony, I caught glimpses of horrified onlookers and the shocked driver, who had slammed on the brakes to a screeching halt. The voices of concerned bystanders rang in my ears, calling for help. In that excruciating moment of pain and bewilderment, the unintended consequences of my actions became painfully clear. I had attempted to rescue a stranger's dog, but in doing so, I had placed myself in grave peril. At least the car I am dying under looks expensive. Was it a limousine? Soon, putting a stop to my useless thoughts, my vision darkened as the pain threatened to overwhelm me. The accident caused me to lose my consciousness and finally led to my present, past life awakening. It marked the beginning of a complex journey of self-discovery and personal growth. It's the beginning of a new me. Chapter 3, Summary Time Skip. Continuation. Time Skip. After 3 months. Hikigaya Hachiman's POV. In my room, I found myself face to face with my father's retired laptop, a relic from his past that he no longer used or can be used. Seriously, this thing looked like it had time traveled from the 90s. As I tentatively ran my fingers over the stiff keyboard, a thought crossed my mind: perhaps I should sell it to make some extra cash? However, a flood of memories intervened as I recalled my dad's mushy stories about how this was his first ever laptop, bought with his first salary. The guy practically serenaded this laptop with sentimental tunes. It was practically his first love. If I dared to part ways with it, I might as well start packing my bags because eviction was inevitable. This again reminded me of how low my status as the only son in this family is. How cruel. That's 30,000 yen, I suppose. I murmured to myself as I glanced at the remaining balance in my bank account after a recent shopping spree. My eyes then wandered to the bottom right corner of the laptop screen, and I noticed the time displayed, 4 p.m. Kamaki should be returning home soon. Should I prepare something like an evening snack for both of us? The thought crossed my mind. After a moment, I decided it was a good plan. With a gentle click, I closed the laptop and saved my progress, then I powered it off and made my way to the kitchen. While I gathered ingredients and pondered what Kamaki might enjoy, I reflected on how long it had been since I was last at school. Since the accident, 3 months have passed. So that also means it has been 3 months since I stopped attending school. The accident happened in early January, right into the first day of the third term. It forced me to stay in the hospital for 1.5 weeks, and then I had to spend an additional 2 weeks in rehabilitation at home. In a typical scenario, I should have returned to school by February's end. But my situation was anything but typical. I somehow managed to complete the last term of my first year from the comfort of my home, completely avoiding classes and only attending the year-end examinations. My excuse? I cited mental trauma from a supposed accident and took medical leave. Of course, it was all a lie. And I have to admit, being at home was a welcome change. Having the luxury of not worrying about anything was incredibly enjoyable. No early morning alarms or looming homework deadlines, just me and my solitude. It was a much-needed break after the grueling 2 weeks spent in rehabilitation following my accident. At least the 2 weeks spent on rehabilitation, as the later part was a completely different story. I was far from free. So, hey, don't get it twisted. I wasn't slacking off during my break. Nope, I kept myself busy with some worthwhile stuff. Now, you might be wondering what I did to be so confident, and I will spill the beans on that in a bit. For now, despite all my complaining, I enjoyed everything and every bit so much, and I now feel somewhat disgruntled about the idea of going back to my life as a second-year high school student after the spring break. Well, there is still a week, I guess. Everything will be different now, and it definitely won't be the same as in my first year. Convincingly, the time I spent in the hospital bed with my leg hanging itself helped me give myself a lot of time to concentrate and sort out my thoughts properly from whatever hazy recollection I could. But, no matter what, I couldn't remember anything past the things I already knew. I mean, I can go deeper and more detailed than before about the experiences I have had on the first day, but I cannot get into anything new. Especially my own personal details, which are, like, crazily foggy. In the end, I gave up on trying to recollect my past life personal details. To be honest, I even preferred it that way. But my curiosity got the better of me, and I attempted to jog my memory. Fortunately or unfortunately, I failed. And, since I was unable to recall those personal details, I abandoned the idea of ever trying again. Instead, I directed my attention towards the show that depicted the world I currently reside in. However, this was only a partially successful attempt. I only managed to retain some key events, a couple of plot lines, and the characteristics and personalities of a handful of the main characters from SNAFU. Following this realization, I was soon discharged from the hospital and found myself back in the familiar surroundings of my childhood home. Nonetheless, something was different this time. I carried with me extra memories from my past life, giving me a new perspective on everything I had done and all the decisions I had made. From that point on, self-reflection became a constant practice for me. I revisited every event that had shaped me since childhood and led me to become the person I am today. I understood that my preference for isolation and lack of interest in social interactions, my resistance to conforming to societal norms and expectations, my inability to make any friends, my lack of empathy, my undiplomatic communication skills, and my highly cynical and pessimistic view of the world were all characteristics and behaviors that led to my current outcast status. Somehow, these traits were not inherent to who I was as a child but rather something I have developed as a defense mechanism from a fear of being hurt emotionally for no particular reason. All that bullying during elementary school, under the disguise of a simple activity of making fun of my name, and many more from my fellow peers have accumulated, disturbing my confidence and slowly contributing to my guarded and solitary nature. I couldn't blame them entirely, though. Despite the trauma they caused, I understood that they were just kids themselves, acting out in their own ways. So, I don't blame them. Well, at least not entirely. I wasn't exactly a saint in figuring them out as just ignorant kids. I simply chose not to hold them accountable and hoped that I wouldn't do anything if our paths ever crossed again. At least, that's what I told myself. First and foremost, I decided to accept every humiliation and rejection I had suffered up until then with a pinch of salt. I began looking at them differently and gradually became indifferent toward those incidents. My focus shifted towards increasing my self-confidence and eliminating self-doubt from within me. Despite all these changes, my ideals remained the same, albeit with a newfound maturity. And maybe a little less grumpy and less lazy too. In all of this, if there was one thing I was truly proud of accomplishing since my accident, it was successfully overcoming my trauma. Particularly my low self-esteem. Yet, now I am cool, and I know it. Through hard work and introspection, I learned to understand my own worth and embrace who I am. My newfound confidence within me was not solely attributed to the transformation in my attitude and physical appearance, but also because of the money I had cashed in and planned to continue earning in the future. After spending a week. Chapter 4, Competition. Continuation. Hachiman Hikigaya's POV. After spending a week recovering at home following my discharge from the hospital, I made a decisive choice to focus on a few key aspects of my life, including the differences I mentioned, and work towards financial success, or at the very least find a way. Yet, I know I am thinking way too far ahead. But I gotta start as early as I can if I want to achieve the peaceful life I want in my later years. Though my past goal of settling in as a full-time house husband doesn't sound bad, I would prefer to keep it as a backup plan. Nevertheless, I was not willing to trade my happiness for a paycheck by pursuing something that didn't bring me joy. I still hate the idea of being a salaryman. However, let's be real. In my present situation, even if I want to gain financial success, I don't exactly have a single marketable skill that can rake in the cash in the first place. But after some days of racking my brain, I realized that there were two activities I truly enjoyed and found exciting: gaming and writing. Playing games and reading books have always been my go-to activities, irrespective of my mood, sometimes even uplifting me. Interestingly, it seemed fitting that these passions were somehow tied to my past memories as well. With this realization, it was evident that honing my skills in either or both of these areas could lead to a fulfilling career path. And if I worked diligently enough, perhaps I could even excel in both. From then on, during the time I stayed at home, I had three main focuses: improving my mental state and overcoming traumatic memories, preparing for year-end examinations, developing my skills in gaming and writing. At the end of it all, I finally found my grand scheme. A way to create a steady income stream for the rest of my high school years and even a few years beyond my graduation, using the resources I had at my disposal. Luckily, as you might have guessed, I have succeeded in it, albeit after facing a couple of ups and downs. It all started when I stumbled upon an online competition held by a random organization. The competition is about inviting talented aspiring developers to participate and present their own game concepts. If you manage to win, you will get prize money and a chance to see your game come to life. Sure as hell, it looked like a total scam. But a scam it might be, or not, it definitely piqued my interest without a doubt. So I went on a hunt for any and every post related to the various and all game contexts. Initially, I didn't care about the size or credibility of the company that was holding the event. I went ahead and applied for almost all the free events that are being hosted. But that happened to be a mistake on my part, as after a few days, I realized that these free sign-up events were just a waste of resources, in my case, time. Nonetheless, learning from that mistake, I went on searching for more official, recognized and trustworthy ones, even if I had to pay the entry fee. After a bit of digging around on the internet, I found a few interesting things. It turns out, these types of competitions are not that uncommon. And many companies and corporations have a unique strategy for these kinds of online events. Their primary goal was not necessarily to create successful games from someone else's ideas. Instead, their aim is to promote their company by conducting these online competitions and producing basic versions of winning concepts in a short period of time. It is a fact that the success rate for these games is low, with the focus being more on marketing their company value than the potential for commercial success of the game itself. Moreover, the games developed by these companies after winning the competitions wouldn't be the full version. Instead, they would be simplified versions of the original concept, with a focus on quick development and deployment. However, even with these kinds of regulations, there is no one who would oppose them. That is, if they were willing to see the bigger picture rather than being hung up on instantaneous success. In the first place, a genuine, aspiring game developer would not enter these competitions in the hopes of becoming an overnight millionaire. They mainly participate to build connections and reputation in the gaming industry. The company also makes it clear that there will be no marketing efforts on their end. In fact, it was said that many times there wouldn't be a winner in these competitions if they hadn't liked any of the game concepts. Sometimes this will also lead to situations where the designated individual responsible for conducting these competitions may not always take them seriously, leading to potential rejections. All in all, if you were smart, you would just think of winning it to get an opportunity to see their ideas come to life with the expertise and resources of prominent gaming companies at our disposal. And if you are lucky, you may potentially earn significant financial rewards, which is my actual goal. So, I needed to make my choice based on all these factors and go for the one that best suited me. After a lengthy search and analysis, I finally settled on 3 game events hosted by 3 different bodies of organizations. These 3 companies had many similarities in the theme they wanted the contestant to prepare for their presentation. So that made things easy for me, as I could send the same pitch to all 3 and hope at least one of them would be interested enough to make me some cash. What they demanded was simplicity, easy gameplay, interest grabbing, and high longevity. Of course, meeting any of these requirements wasn't as simple as they made it out to be. If not, there wouldn't have been so many people who failed to become game developers, considering the number of competitions being held every year. But I had the perfect game concept that could make the cutout for sure. It was a game from my past life, one that had yet to be created or discovered by anyone else in the vast world of the internet. The game was called Candy Crush. The game was a whirlwind of vibrant colors, with players swapping candies in an attempt to form rows or columns of 3 or more identical treats. Each successful match cleared the candies from the grid and earned points for the player. It was a deceptively simple concept, yet it offered endless possibilities within its limited number of moves. I could already see the vivid candies bursting on the screen, creating a satisfying cascade of sugary bliss. But it wasn't just about the colorful candies and satisfying combos. The beauty of this game was its accessibility. Anyone could pick it up and enjoy it. Its casual nature would make it appealing to all ages. And more than that, it got immense replay value and could even be called evergreen games. I knew that Candy Crush had the potential to become a smash hit. I might sound a bit greedy, and I might actually be, but why would I want to share my potential source of income with others if I could have it all for myself? As a great man once said, it is not inherently sinful to harbor greed, but rather in the inability to bear the repercussions of their desires. Simply put, don't bite off more than you can chew. So yet, as a high school student, I knew that I couldn't bring this vision to life on my own. Maybe if I didn't set a deadline for myself, but even considering that I lacked the necessary skills and resources to develop such a complex game. Setting aside these thoughts, I focused on preparing for the contest. For a month, I prepared a detailed proposal, outlining the gameplay mechanics, target audience, budget and financials, and potential for monetization. And then, I submitted my work to the 3 companies, as mentioned before. But my 3 submissions were rejected on my first try. Just to be clear, I had to pay to participate in these events. So, of course, I wasn't going to leave it at that without getting a proper review and explanation for the rejection. I wrote a letter to the company management, seeking an explanation, and of course I received no response. Then, I decided to enter the next event with the same concept for all 3 companies again. Maybe I tweaked my project a little bit. And yes, I had to pay the participation fee again, which left a bitter taste in my mouth. Yet, I was again faced with rejection. All 3 submissions were rejected. Maybe I was just being too arrogant because of these recent memories. Anyway, I went through the same process of seeking an explanation from the management, but once again received none. At that point, I thought about giving up. I didn't even have the money to pay for the participation fee. But after a week, I received an interesting email from one of the 3 companies with which I took part in the event. From there, it was quite a journey, and maybe I will tell you about it another time. But to sum it up simply, here's what happened. This gaming company, OreGaIru, which hosted the contest I participated in, was interested in my game concept and was willing to invest by it. But that made me wonder, how could I possibly have been rejected in my first 2 submissions? I could have saved some money if they had just done that. Idiots, was my first thought. Anyway, all I could sense from the behavior of the person who introduced himself as the man in charge of the contest I participated in was that he messed up big time. At least, that's how his face looked and the way he spoke. Interestingly, the initial competition I participated in was rejected by this guy. Yet, I didn't bother remembering his name. Maybe it was also because of that he wasn't the one who is now in charge of my game, which I am ever thankful for. It was this other guy, the current overseer, who was more friendly and accommodating toward me. And I think he is an interesting dude to work with. After going through all the necessary processes, I would need to sign a contract outlining the terms of our partnership. The contract, reviewed with me by my parents beside me, stipulated that OreGaIru Corporation would own the majority of the game's rights, including the intellectual property IP. I would receive an initial payment of Yen 500,000 approximately $5,000, upon signing the agreement. Once the game was launched, I would receive an additional Yen 300,000 approximately $3,000. And if the game proved to be successful and I made a certain amount in net profits, I could potentially earn up to 1% of those profits. However, this was ultimately at the discretion of OreGaIru Corporation. So it can be said that my future earnings will heavily depend on how well the game performs. If it became a hit, I could potentially receive a small percentage of the revenue generated. That is more of the reason why Candy Crush was the best choice. Anyway, as of now, I had received the initial payment, and my game was still in the early stages of development. It would have been all great and done if I had won the other 2 online competitions I entered before this. With my mind wandering on different topics, I also managed to complete preparing the snacks, which I had been working on for 10 minutes. I had everything set, including the dining table. Bang! Just then, a shout echoed through the house, accompanied by the bang of a door opening. "Big brother, I am home!" A familiar voice called out, breaking through the peaceful atmosphere. Chapter 5, Plot begins. Continuation. After 2 weeks. Hachiman Hikigaya's POV. You are the one who needs to drop dead Hikigaya. My Japanese teacher, Shizuka Hiratsuka, popped a vein as she finished reading my essay. With a deep sigh, Ms. Hiratsuka placed a hand on her head and peered down at the paper in front of her. "Say, can you tell me what the assignment was that I gave you in class?" she asked in a resigned tone, holding up the essay I had submitted. "Is there something wrong, Ms. Hiratsuka? You wanted us to write an essay on the theme, reflecting on my life in high school, right?" I responded with a calm and straightforward question. "What's with the look that says something is wrong on my part, Mr. Smartass? Don't forget, it's your ideas and views that are rotten." "They are not rotten, Ms. Hiratsuka. And, let's be honest, isn't that how brats think nowadays?" I defended my views and beliefs, ignoring her somewhat confrontational tone. She scoffed. "You are also a brat, Hikigaya. And how can you be so flavorless?" "I am not a brat," I declared it proudly. "Don't jinx me with those fools addicted to youth. I am beyond their league, Ms. Hiratsuka." "Agreed. You are more like a soulless fish. And where is this arrogance coming from?" Ms. Hiratsuka complained. "Arrogance? Do I come across like that?" "I don't know. Ms. Hiratsuka. It seems I have failed to properly convey my thoughts in this essay. Why don't you give me a day or so? I am sure I will prepare a better one and be able to convince you this time. I suggested, acknowledging my shortcomings. Who needs to be convinced by whom, idiot? She shot back at me with an angry glare. Of course it is you. An immediate reply from me that is full of certainty. That's it. You are a lost cause. No, we just have different perspectives, and that's okay. Let's agree to disagree. Yeah, there is no need to fight. I am willing to coexist peacefully unless I am consciously bothered. Ugh, what am I gonna do with you? There is nothing that needs to be done, Ms. Hiratsuka. Oh, trust me, there is a lot. Ms. Hiratsuka held her fist to her forehead with her eyes flashing, shooting daggers at me, as if she were bracing herself for some action. However, my instincts warned me of the impending danger to my response, and I heeded their advice by staying silent. After a moment of tense silence, she abruptly changed the subject. You haven't tried joining any clubs, have you? Clubs? If you are referring to the practice where a bunch of people with a common purpose or interest meet regularly and take part in shared activities, then you are asking the wrong person. I would still like to continue with my babbling, but the spectator, Ms. Hiratsuka, wasn't keen on my views as she gave another death stare full of malice. My body stiffened just looking at her expression to avoid the worst-case scenario that is triggering her any further. I got straight to the point. *Ahem, no, ma'am. That's it. I think I have a way of correcting your wrongdoing. Now, follow me. No arguments. Using a firm tone, Ms. Hiratsuka instructed me to follow her, indicating that she has a plan or course of action in mind. I would prefer to know where we are headed. I politely requested more clarity. Oi, I said, no arguments. Yes, ma'am. Hearing Ms. Hiratsuka's emphasized words, I complied with her request and simply followed behind her. Well, it is not like I am completely clueless about the current happenings. I just asked her for the sake of it. I mean, wouldn't it be suspicious if I had followed her without any protest, just for the reason she said not to argue? Especially considering my typically cautious rebellious character. But enough about that. If you still haven't caught on to what I am talking about and the situation I find myself in, let me lay it out for you. Since I bunk, *Ahem, I mean I was on medical leave for the last term of my first year, you could say my second year is the beginning of my high school journey post-accident. So it could be said that this is my first real experience of high school after all the changes I have gone through. And let me tell you, these first couple of weeks back at school have been anything but exciting. In fact, they have been painfully mundane and dull. So let's directly skip over all that and get straight into the current predicament at hand. Ms. Hiratsuka is now dragging me with her invisible force, and obviously, according to the plot, our destination should be the service club, all on account of punishing me. Honestly, I am unable to comprehend her reasoning behind such an atypical punishment, or is it even considered a punishment? No. Maybe if this was the old me, then I suppose it can be considered a punishment, and a pretty big one at that. Only for the old me, though. As for the current me, I am not sure what exactly it meant to me, but it is definitely not a punishment. For now, the scenario is unfolding just as it did in the show, or at least from what I can recall. Alas, it's more like I am willingly allowing it to play out. I manifestly made a handful of calculated decisions, being fully aware that I was following the storyline, such as writing the essay on youth and now following behind Ms. Hiratsuka silently. In spite of all this conscious effort, I really don't have a solid explanation to defend my choice to follow the story. At some point, for whatever reason, it seemed like an obvious choice to me. Do I even need a valid reason for doing so? As I have stated earlier, my views are still quite similar to those of my previous self. Meaning whatever I have written in the assignment are my ideals and thought process. However, the current me would prefer to keep my ideals to myself instead of gathering trouble by vocalizing them. Or, in more clear terms, I have gained more patience and control over myself, allowing me to check my urge to spread my unlimited wisdom. So yeah, I am fully aware of what I am getting myself into by doing this, and I know how the previous me in the show got tangled up in a love triangle and ultimately made a choice. Even after all this, if I really had to explain my reason, it is related to my slight intrigue and admiration towards one of the main characters of the show. And personally, I also think that we would get along quite well if we were ever to meet in person. Nonetheless, I am not a teenager who is head over heels just because I admire her personality and the way she carries herself. Sure. Maybe I am a teenager. But I am no fool. So, no way that I am possibly busted already. No way. We are here. Ms. Hiratsuka announced. Hikigaya, I am surprised you really don't bother me again. She complimented me for not nagging, I presume. No need to be surprised, Ms. Hiratsuka. I simply prefer not to waste my energy on pointless matters. I replied casually, my eyes scanning the plain corridor where we stood. Nothing stood out except for the plain corridor. There wasn't even a sign telling us which room this was. Well then, let's go in. Nodding to my reply, Ms. Hiratsuka's hand directly reached out to open the sliding door with a clatter. Ms. Hiratsuka, I interrupted. What? I thought you said you don't want to waste your energy on pointless arguments. She teased me with a smirk. I am not contradicting my statement. I defended myself. But, I believe it's basic courtesy to knock before entering a room. Tisk. Shut it, Hikigaya. She used the same practical, tried and tested technique that every adult uses to oppress the younglings when they point out elders' flaws. I fell silent, deciding it wasn't worth arguing over such a small matter. There were more important things to focus on anyways. Truth be told, I am a little nervous, and maybe a little excited too, and come on, let's be real. Who wouldn't be? The chance of having a face-to-face meeting in real life with the character that people only get to see on display? Well, sure, I had spoken to a few people before, including my sister and Ms. Hiratsuka, but they don't really count. In fact, if it were anyone else, I wouldn't be feeling anywhere near as anxious as I do now. It reminded me of the day I felt a similar level of anxiety when I signed the contract with the company. But even back then, I think I was much calmer than I am now, even though that decision had the potential to completely alter my life's trajectory. Let me give you a heads up here. My anxiety is not due to a lack of preparation, but rather because I am fully prepared. You get what I am trying to say, right? Anyway, it's a truly unfathomable feeling to experience. Exhale. After taking a deep breath to steady myself, I entered the classroom behind Ms. Hiratsuka. Excuse me. I announced my presence, unlike certain individuals who barged in unannounced. Chapter 6, Yukinoshita Yukino. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. Let me give you a heads up here. My anxiety is not due to a lack of preparation, but rather because I am fully prepared. You get what I am trying to say, right? Anyway, it's a truly unfathomable feeling to experience. Exhale. After taking a deep breath to steady myself, I entered the classroom behind Ms. Hiratsuka. Excuse me. I announced my presence, unlike certain individuals who barged in unannounced. Looking around the room, it was pretty empty, with chairs and tables piled up in cluttered stacks along the edge. But my focus didn't linger on the room or its belongings for long. Because the center of attraction was completely someone else. A girl. And the moment she entered my field of vision, my mind and body seemed to freeze in place. I couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty. With the soft glow of the sunset casting a warm halo around her, she sat there reading a book as her long black, silky hair fell around her shoulders and back. Yukinoshita Yukino. Elegant and refined, she seemed to possess an otherworldly grace that set her apart from the other girls in our class, despite wearing the same uniform. Damn, I know she was pretty, all from my memories and a few rumors. So I set my bar a lot higher to not space out like an idiot in front of her, but this. As I was dazing out at Yukinoshita, realizing there were visitors, she placed a bookmark in her paperback book and looked up. And the first person she looked at was me. Maybe she heard my voice or was affected by my too much intense staring. Her eyes locked onto mine, momentarily holding me captive in their cold, nonchalant stare. My casual posture straightened up a little in response. And the obvious reason for her cold eyes was undoubtedly my too obvious stare. There is no need to give it a second thought. Her eyes stayed on me for a few more seconds before eventually shifting back towards Ms. Hiratsuka, marking her as a new target. But this time, her gaze seemed comparably less deadly. Ms. Hiratsuka. I thought I told you to knock before you enter. Even if I do knock, you never respond. That's because you enter before I have time to respond. Yukinoshita gave a disapproving look in response to Ms. Hiratsuka's words. She continued looking at me. And who is that uninvited and anonymous student with you? Yab. She is the same prideful and confident Yukinoshita Yukino, and she is, as always, so welcoming, just as I remember her to be. Well, no use getting riled up about it. I will just let her do her thing, or else I will only be fueling her hostility. Indifferent to her harsh words directed at me, I simply stood, choosing not to react. Instead, I looked at Ms. Hiratsuka, the individual who is responsible for bringing me here, all while keeping my hands tucked away in my pockets. This is Hikigaya. He's looking to join the club. Prompted by my gaze, Ms. Hiratsuka nodded at me in acknowledgement. Well, now it's time for my grand entrance, I suppose. I am Hikigaya Hachiman of grade 11, class F. I introduced myself by looking directly into Yukinoshita's piercing gaze head-on. Her steely eyes locked onto mine, but I didn't reject it. If anything, I found her unwavering gaze intriguing. It felt like she was trying to figure something out about me, and I was equally curious about what she saw. Was it curiosity? No. It was something else. After I was done, I turned towards Ms. Hiratsuka, seeking an explanation. However, teach, what do you mean by looking to join the club? I raised an eyebrow, feigning ignorance, even though I already knew what was up. Exactly what it means, Hikigaya. You must engage in this club's activities as a penalty. I won't allow any disagreement, objection, protest, questions, or retorts. Cool down for a bit. Reflect on your actions. Without allowing me any room to protest, she declared her verdict with great resolution. With that being said, you can probably tell by looking, but his heart is considerably corrupt. As a result, he's a pitiable and lonely, but overly confident, a little prideful, arrogant beyond reason, and a totally self-centered egoist person. She added, turning in Yukinoshita's direction, explaining my in-depth personality. So, can I leave him to you? I am requesting that you straighten out his corrupt and introverted behavior. She concluded, almost as if she were handing her child to a teacher. I respectfully decline. Yukinoshita stated. Self-centered egoists are the worst kind of humanity, and I have no tolerance for them. She clarified. Yukinoshita. You, who have reached the highest point of what you consider egotism, are the least suitable person to be criticizing me like this. It's a realm that I can't even begin to understand. Furthermore, I detest how he arrogantly judges others based solely on their appearance. Yukinoshita continued with a hateful tone. True. Unknowingly, the way Hikigaya gazed at Yukinoshita as soon as he stepped inside the room left a bitter taste in her mouth. Now, if it had been just another judgmental look, she wouldn't have given it a second thought. She's seen plenty of those before and has learned to brush them off. But there was something different about the way Hikigaya looked at her. It brought to mind those specific comparisons she often hears from people connected to her family's business. And it rubbed her the wrong way. Though she couldn't quite pinpoint who exactly Hikigaya was comparing her to, she was clearly not okay with it. Yet Hikigaya remained blissfully unaware of the chaos he had unknowingly stirred up, lost in his own world. Wow! She is sharp with her eyes, and tongue as well, I suppose. But hey, that wasn't my intention if I had come out as such. It was like simply comparing the Yukinoshita in front of me to the one I pictured her to be in my mind. Even though I knew it was wrong, it was just an instinctual reaction to see how accurate or far off I was. It was only a natural thing to do, wasn't it? But I can't say that now. Can I? When Yukinoshita accused me, Ms. Hiratsuka first looked at me with a puzzled expression that seemed to say, "What have you done this time?" In response, I just made a dismissive face and shrugged my shoulders cluelessly, conveying my message of I don't know. Yukinoshita just stood there, observing our interaction, and the irritating look on her face served as evidence that she understood my shameless act of denying her claims with a poker face. Way to make my first impression on someone I was looking forward to meeting. Ms. Hiratsuka started with a soft sigh, her expression akin to that of a parent covering up their child's mischief from the principal. Even though he is a self-centered egoist, he is quite good at judging and knows when to abort if he concludes that the situation is getting out of hand. She explained. He ignores them as if he wasn't bothered from the beginning. In the end, he is pretty easy to deal with once you get the hang of using it against him. Hey, teach, don't go around sharing my not-so-strong suit with everyone. But hey, at least she addressed the first part of Yukino's complaint. As for the latter part, Ms. Hiratsuka gave me one last sideways glance before continuing. I am sure it was a misunderstanding. I can assure you, he's not that type. So what do you say? Didn't know she thought this highly of me. Now I feel like I betrayed her. So as compensation, I am willing to forgive her for all the oppression that she has used on me. Misunderstanding, hey? And also the type who knows when to give up, I see. Yukinoshita commented thoughtfully, receiving an approval certificate from Ms. Hiratsuka. I am not some man-eating monster. You both do realize I am standing right in front of you, don't you? However, is that something I should be viewing in a positive light? Of course it is. Is there even a need to ask? Well, if it's a request from Ms. Hiratsuka, I can't very well refuse. I accept. Yukinoshita accepted, with a slight intrigue hidden in her voice. Okay. Then, I will leave the rest to you. Ms. Hiratsuka smiled with satisfaction. As she turned to leave the room, she cast a glance back at Yukinoshita, her expression softening with a touch of regret. Good luck. She spoke, her tone carrying a note of apology for leaving Yukinoshita with such a difficult task. Just before she disappeared through the doorway, she added in haste. You too, Hikigaya. Thud. Then she closed the door, leaving me alone in the room. Yeah, right. Like I would believe that. It was the first scene in the show. I knew she was still lurking right outside the door. But... whoa. For a second, I thought Yukinoshita might not give in to Ms. Hiratsuka. That's when it hit me, how much I was actually looking forward to meeting her in person, making me even think that this might be the best decision I have made in my life. Before I could plan my next move, though, I needed to clear my name. So, without further ado, I took an empty chair placed adjacent to Yukinoshita, just 4 feet away, and made myself comfortable. In the next half a second, the room was enveloped in silence, except for the occasional wind blowing in from the open window. During those quiet moments, my eyes never wavered from Yukinoshita. Asterisk cough. I fake coughed my throat in an attempt to get her attention. What is it? Yukinoshita looked at my side from her book and asked in a slightly irritated tone, probably due to my stares up until now. Chapter 7, Vice President. Continuation. After some time. Hachiman's POV. Asterisk cough. I fake coughed my throat in an attempt to get her attention. What is it? Yukinoshita looked at my side from her book and asked in a slightly irritated tone, probably again due to my stares up until now. Asterisk ahem, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with Ms. Hiratsuka earlier, and I wanted to ask. Did I really come across as judgmental? I was genuinely curious. She simply raised an eyebrow at me, suggesting that she was not entirely convinced by my innocence, her piercing blue eyes meeting mine with a hint of surprise and anger. There was also a flicker of annoyance in her expression, as if she found my interruption irksome. Chill out, women. Can't a guy make a mistake? I messed up my first impression, for sure. I thought I had a handle on things, believing I could control my thoughts and avoid giving off any wrong impressions. However, it seems my attempt to express curiosity might have come across as judgmental instead. Okay. I get it. I get it. No need to get worked up. I interjected, hoping to ease the tension with a casual wave of my hand. Shifting gears, I forged ahead. So, regarding your response. Did I actually receive one? I don't know. Well, given the entire mess, I guess I did, in a sense. I should just take that as a yes based on my own judgment. And it seems I did come across as a jerk, which, by the way, was not my intention. I clarified, aiming to clear my stance. Continuing on, I offered my apology. So, all I can say is that I am sorry if I caused any trouble. Yukinoshita's eyes were fixated on me as I calmly explained my side of the story. However, I caught a faint tremor in her gaze, hinting that my words might be affecting her more than she let on. Her response was cutting, and her words were sharp with criticism. Shockingly, it seems you are not as dense and an ignorant fool as you appear to be. She didn't stop there, though. Still, I would have preferred a more sincere apology. But I guess I can't expect anything more. God, this girl. She really doesn't have any filters, doesn't she? I couldn't help but roll my eyes internally. Oh, I am glad to hear that. Ignoring her later comments, I replied sarcastically. Our conversation came to an end, and we left the room once again in silence. But it didn't remain the same for too long, as Yukinoshita took the initiative to point out. You don't strike me as someone who cares about others' opinions. I don't, truly. I replied, affirming her guess, and added. And I could say the same about you. So why do you care what I think of you? I don't know at that time, but those words of mine stuck in her mind deeper and more impactfully than I could have ever imagined. Yukinoshita shifted the topic of discussion, hiding the disturbance my statement caused her. You seem to be pretty alright with everything Ms. Hiratsuka said. I am not exactly alright. But I have to make do with it, I guess. I gave an honest reply, as I was unable to see through her face cad. Not like if I were to protest, smoothing gonna change. I suppose so. She mused, leaving the conversation hanging in the air. Changing the subject, I glanced around the cluttered classroom. Is this the service club? That's right. Though surprised inwardly by my correct assumption, Yukinoshita answered. Asterisk nod. I simply nodded in return. Are there any other members besides us? I inquired, already considering myself a member of the club. No, there aren't. Ah, doesn't that make me the vice president of the club by default then? With my chin held up, I spoke proudly. I am not sure why, but I really liked that title. Vice president, that sounds so damn cool. But to begin with, does a position like vice president even exist? Who cares? I like it, so I will simply make one for myself. What gave you the idea? Do you think I would give such honor to someone as incompetent and lousy as you? Yukinoshita revoked it immediately, showing clear dissatisfaction with my declaration. She continued. Is this the reason Ms. Hiratsuka brought you here? You truly are as self-centered, ignorant, and overconfident as she listed you to be. And I must now add one more to the list, narcissistic. You're spot on. I am narcissistic. But to be fair, in some manner or another, everyone in this world is. They just refuse to admit it. Spare me. Everyone in the world is such a defensive statement that people typically use when their arguments lack substance. What? Surprised? I have only recently learned how to use it effectively. How shameless of you to accept without a hint of hesitation. I would argue there is no shame in being honest, especially when the cat's already out of the bag. Well, Hikigaya, since you are being honest, then I must inquire, what exactly led you to be dragged here by Ms. Hiratsuka? Because, as unconvincing as it may sound, I don't think you lack the ability and qualification to have a normal conversation. In addition, your appearance is not something that is totally unapproachable, and you seem capable of handling various situations with calmness. This time, it was me who found myself taken aback by her unexpected initiative in the conversation. However, I couldn't help but think. Come on, can't you be a little more appreciative? I mean, I put in a considerable amount of effort and faced many challenges to get over many things, which I could have easily sidestepped if I had no desire for change. Particularly my rotten eyes. On second thought, I suppose it wasn't all that difficult, as I didn't always have them. Presumably, I developed them somewhere in middle school, where all my trauma accumulated, leading to the avoidant attitude. But again, after receiving a slightly positive assessment from Yukinoshita Yukino, even after the initial slip-up I made, I think it's all worth it. Oh, I will take that as a compliment. And yet, first and foremost, I don't have any problem. Taking this chance, I went on and revealed the context of the essay I have written. Only to hear, all I see is a loner nagging at others because he is envious of what they possess, rather than taking the initiative to attain it for himself. You think I don't know that? Reflecting on my past experiences, I realized that, while my perspectives may not be entirely accurate, they are not entirely false either. Confronting the bitter truth, I acknowledged that my slightly exaggerated views stemmed from jealousy toward those seemingly relishing in their youth. I understood that embracing youth often entails ignoring the very criticisms I was voicing. However, I couldn't concede that they were entirely baseless. I am the type to only believe it when I experience it myself. And this is my desperate attempt to find the joy in my youth, which will make me ignore those points. I just hope I can find it here. Yukinoshita's intense stare pierced through me, her words cutting like shards of ice. You are not denying this, are you? No wonder they brought you here. Are you some sort of terrorist posing as a student? Your beliefs and principles are so twisted. Third-person view. It was unlike Yukinoshita to question someone's choices so harshly. She was typically one to respect individual choices, viewing them as a fundamental right for every person. She usually wouldn't bat an eye if someone's ideals didn't align with hers, it just wasn't her style to get worked up over differences. Instead, she would be more fixated on proving the validity of her own path than proving the falsehood of other paths. But she can't seem to apply the same concept to this person named Hachiman Hikigaya. Something about him seemed to throw her off her game. His nonchalant way of agreeing with his flaws, and even resonating with them, none of it didn't sit right with her. She felt like his existence alone was a threat to the truth she believed and relied on to navigate her life thus far. Hachiman's POV. I felt a surge of anger rise within me at her accusation. What? What's wrong with calling out a fool for their foolishness? If anything, I should be applauded for daring to expose the truth behind youthful indiscretion based on my own experiences. Personal experience. Hikigaya. How many times did you get rejected in your confessions for you to claim youth as evil? Her question was irrelevant, yet it struck a nerve, somehow managing to awaken a distant and recently abandoned memory within me. It was like poking a sleeping bear, an unnecessary and uncomfortable deleted scene from my life. I mean, confessing was about as common for me as spotting a unicorn in downtown Tokyo. Let's just say that I had my fair share of setbacks in my life in that particular genre, and I would rather not revisit that chapter of my life again. I explained using as few words as possible. After a pause, Yukinoshita nodded in acknowledgement, her demeanor softening ever so slightly. I understand. She replied back to her usual calm self. Anyway, the fact that joining my club is viewed as a form of punishment still troubles me, but it can't be helped, I guess. Yukinoshita remarked, rising from her seat. With her gaze directed downward at me, she continued. Welcome to the service club. I invite you. Her proclamation echoed through the room, carrying an air of authority. According to Ms. Hiratsuka, it is the duty of those who are superior to save those who lead a pitiable existence. I will ensure that I fulfill this responsibility and address your issue. Show some gratitude. She finished standing there with her arms folded, undoubtedly spelled with an aura of nobility. In a mischievous move, I also stood up, mimicking her posture with a touch of humor. I beseech your gracious presence, Majesty Yukinoshita Yukino. Please allow me to endeavor my modest part in your noblesse oblige and amend the sins of this lowly commoner. On the other hand, Yukinoshita glared at me as if to say, why are you even alive? While her cheeks dyed a light pinkish hue. Soon, silence descended upon the room, with me standing in an awkward position enough to make my ears and legs hurt. I couldn't help but notice Yukinoshita's valiant effort to maintain her composure, resisting the urge to crack a smile. It was clear she was trying her utmost best. And honestly, I was rooting for her, sort of. Undoubtedly, to say I am not interested in seeing her lips curve would be an understatement. I was itching to deliver another one-liner or even more cringe dialogue, but my instincts warned me that doing so would put my life in possible danger. So the silence only deepened as we both stood. Yukinoshita. I am coming in. However, the silence was soon shattered as the door was violently pulled open with a resounding clatter. I told you to knock. Were you spying on us? Yukinoshita and I flaunted Ms. Hiratsuka at the same time. Chapter 8, Challenge. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. So the silence only deepened as we both stood. Yukinoshita. I am coming in. However, the silence was soon shattered as the door was violently pulled open with a resounding clatter. I told you to knock. Were you spying on us? Yukinoshita and I flaunted Ms. Hiratsuka at the same time. Gosh, was her timing impeccable, or what? What a sneaky tactic to use, especially coming from a teacher. I remarked. And she has the audacity to label me as corrupt not once but twice at that. Unacceptable, truly unacceptable. This time I was ready and was able to dodge the worst-case scenario with the newfound tool I stumbled upon in a recent unfortunate incident, but it remains the fact that she is potentially a subject that may cause harm to my privacy. I made a mental note to remain vigilant against her in the future so that I can prevent her from pulling this kind of move whenever she pleases. Nevertheless, her expected appearance did not result in all bad. While I regretted missing the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to witness Yukinoshita Yukino crack out, let's not dwell on that and look at the bright side, as her arrival did help dispel the uncomfortable silence. I couldn't help but notice how quickly Yukinoshita regained her composure after hearing Ms. Hiratsuka's voice. Was that intentional? No way, right? I know Ms. Hirotsuka can be smart when needed. But that couldn't be, right? She couldn't possibly be that calculated, or could she? Sorry. Don't mind me. I was just stopping by, so just continue as you were. With that single statement, Ms. Hirotsuka effortlessly dispelled all my accusations against her. I half expected her to bluntly ignore my claim, but guess not. Is it because of Yukinoshita's presence? Glancing toward Yukinoshita, now composed, I sensed a silent query in her gaze directed at Ms. Hirotsuka. Is his accusation true? With a casual lean against the classroom wall, Ms. Hirotsuka flashed a knowing smile at Yukinoshita before turning her attention back to me. Then, with an amused tone, she addressed me directly. However, Hikigaya, when did you become the type to show courtesy and be considerate towards others? I thought you were just picking on me before. Hearing this, I face-palmed, not because of her words but anticipating the inevitable follow-up question. What is she, an idiot? She simply spilled the beans herself. If her intent was to misdirect or change the subject, she certainly missed the mark. When exactly did you overhear our conversation while supposedly passing by, Ms. Hirotsuka? Yukinoshita's inquiry cut through the air, her perceptiveness shining through. I don't know about Ms. Hirotsuka being an idiot or not, but Yukinoshita was certainly not one. He. Ms. Hirotsuka's response? A sheepish chuckle. I can't believe that just moments ago, I was considering her to be calculative. With a resigned sigh, I decided to intervene. Ms. Hirotsuka, why do you seem to be inquiring as if there's something wrong with me displaying courtesy? This time, I chose to overlook her actions as she managed to get us out of a pinch, but I was also somewhat irritated by her probing. Is it wrong to be a good person who respects others' feelings? Maybe this really isn't for me? So, anyway, I did my part, leaving it to Ms. Hirotsuka to hope that Yukinoshita would also overlook her actions. Oh, trust me, it was when it was coming from you. Ms. Hirotsuka added, attempting to maintain the flow of the conversation. I understood her attempt to keep things moving, but was picking on me the only approach she could think of in this situation? But anyway, I had to admit, she did a good job. So she wasn't a complete idiot. I am not showing courtesy or consideration to others. I am simply being courteous and considerate to myself. Being the topic of discussion, I shared one of my mottos. See, I told you. What did she say? I agree. Yukinoshita nodded her head in affirmation. For what exactly again? But happy for you, I guess, Ms. Hirotsuka, as it does seem like she is letting this one slide. Yukinoshita. It appears that you will have a hard time straightening his stupid ideologies. Ms. Hirotsuka expressed it in a troubled tone. Yukinoshita replied dejectedly. It certainly appears so. This atmosphere. I couldn't bear another moment of it. Hey, you can't just spout nonsense about straightening out my ideologies. And more importantly, I demand a level of respect befitting a vice president of a club. I complained, my tone demanding. Hikigaya, you are not the vice president. In fact, you are not even a member of the club, as you haven't submitted your application yet. Yukinoshita stated it matter-of-factly. Not to worry, I will submit it by the evening and will assume my rightful position. As the president of the service club, I disagree with your claims. Yukinoshita declared it firmly. Wait, you are still hung up on it. I thought it was already decided. She is a lot more persistent than I presumed to be, and in the wrong way, that is. No. You are simply unworthy of such a position. What? Do you even have a choice? I mean, we two are the only members of the club. Can you see anyone else here? I countered. Just so you know, we do not accept club applications during this hour of school. Yukinoshita stated this, sidestepping my question to address another issue. No problem. I will be, by tomorrow. Of course, that wasn't enough to back me down. Ms. Hirotsuka chimed in from the side. Hey, it's just a tiny club of 2 people, which shouldn't even exist according to the rules. Why are you making a huge deal about a worthless title? And Hikigaya, don't tell me you fantasize about the position of vice president to vice captain of some pirate ship, as it sounds slightly similar. Seeing through her, I suggested. Teach. I prefer it if you don't rub your fantasies out, as if they are mine. I also think you need to decrease your consumption of manga. But I like your comparison, though. It's not a tiny club. Yukinoshita objected. I supported her. Certainly. Yet, the moment I joined this club, I shall not tolerate being disrespected or talked down to. It's nice that you two are getting along with each other. Ms. Hirotsuka commented, making me ponder, do we? Yukinoshita asked. How is it getting along when it was the first thing we agreed upon? Well, then let's do it this way. In my name as your supervisor, I appoint Hachiman Hikigaya as the operational vice president of the service club. From now on, I will guide troubled lambs to this club, where they will be under your supervision. Both of you will try to help them as you see fit. And you will show your moral righteousness to each other to the best of your ability as president and vice president. Who can help these people? Gundam fight. Ready, go. When did operational vice president become a thing? Is it something like operational CEO? I refuse. As expected, Yukinoshita declared, bluntly rejecting Teach's proposition. After a minute. But right after a minute or so. Yukinoshita said in a defeated tone, fine. Although I am a little annoyed that I must give in to such cheap provocation, I accept. That's how it is. Don't underestimate Ms. Hirotsuka. She didn't give up after the immediate rejection. She went on to explain force, Yukinoshita, how we both have no right to say no in this matter but to accept. However, still seeing no change, with a wishful thought to provide motivation to us, she added an absurd offer that the winner can command the loser to do anything. Even I felt awkward with how she phrased it. Still, the result was the same. In the end, Ms. Hirotsuka used her last resort, card of provocation. To which Yukinoshita fell so unwillingly, and that's how we ended up here. Then it's decided. Ms. Hirotsuka grinned broadly, ignoring the mental daggers Yukinoshita was tossing at her. Still, Yukinoshita sure hates losing. I noted it, after seeing it personally. Hey, you haven't asked me if I accept. Even though the anything offer is tempting enough, I still should show some reluctance. Yet, never ever display your desperation. You don't want to be the vice president? Ms. Hirotsuka questioned. Bring it on. I did a half fist bump with air. You are deceiving no one. Your vulgar thoughts are clearly visible. Hearing Yukinoshita's comment, I realized and wondered, who, I was seen through, once again, it seems. I will decide the winner of this match. Of course, the decision will be influenced by my opinion and bias. Don't think about it too much, and just act accordingly, in an appropriate and proper manner, and do your best. Declaring these words, Ms. Hirotsuka left the room, leaving only a very cross Yukinoshita and me behind. Having nothing to say to each other, we both went back to our positions. After some time, the bell rang, indicating the end of the school day. Yukinoshita quickly set about getting her things together to go home. After she had carefully put her book in her bag, she rose from her seat. Then, with only a fleeting glance in my direction, she moved to slide the door shut, evidently prepared to depart without so much as a "see you tomorrow" or a simple goodbye. Yukinoshita! I called out, though not with much expectation. She paused in her actions, her hand hesitating on the door handle as she glanced back at me over her shoulder, not fully turning to face me. What? She inquired. What do you think of sharing contact numbers? Thud, closing door. At least sharing email would have sufficed. And just like that, she left, leaving me alone in the now empty room. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. Okay? Leaning my head over the desk, I let out a sigh, my body still slouched in the chair. Damn! Suddenly, I felt an inexplicable urge to smoke. No, no, no. The heck am I even thinking? I am sure that Ms. Hirotsuka is at fault for messing up my thoughts. Yet, let's just go home already. Chapter 9, Revenge. Continuation. Same day evening. Hachiman's POV. Was it too aggressive to suggest exchanging contact information during our first encounter? Was I too straightforward? Nah. I don't think so. From the very beginning, I wanted to be upfront about my desire to build a relationship between us. Now, after meeting her and having a conversation, my interest has only grown. So I reckon there is no point in beating around the bush. I monologued the incident with Yukinoshita as I walked straight back home, trying to make my actions clear for myself. After a brief walk, I arrived at my doorstep and, without hesitation, swung the door open. Upon stepping inside, I was met with an unexpected sight, a middle-aged old man sleeping soundly on my sofa. Yet, this man was none other than the sole dad of this lone son I knew of. And he also happened to be my mortal and eternal adversary. The sight of him, relaxing in his deep sleep mode without a care in the world, jolted up a memory of a special day. Few months ago. That was the day when I needed to sign the contract with the game company. And this meeting spot was set in a cafe near Kobe City, which is not too far or too near my house. Originally, I planned to attend the meeting with my mother because an adult guardian is required for such legal proceedings, given that I am still underage. But my plan got pushed away as the old man begged on accompanying me, claiming it was his duty as a father and a few other *tty and questionable quotes his puny brain could conjure. Now that I give it a second thought, maybe I have given in to his childish demands too easily. My bad, I should have shut him down from the get-go to spare myself from being dragged into his nonsensical/horrible reasoning session about why he should be the one accompanying me. Fact: the creatures called fathers, regardless of time and space, all exhibit the same behavior when it comes to matters concerning their male offspring. Source: yours truly, me. Likewise, my old man couldn't believe the fact that his great stupid, good for everything nothing, warrior loner, of a son had clinched some online contest victory. So at the end, I accepted my fate and left for the meeting location, with my dad accompanying me. And my prediction came true the moment we stepped out of our humble abode to find the meeting venue. Throughout the journey, his eyes were full of suspicion, and never once did they get off my back, as if we were about to get scammed, and he needed to take the lead and defend our lineage before it could crumble in the hands of his irresponsible son. However, I endured every ounce of pain and suffering by keeping my mouth shut, waiting patiently for the actual moment to arrive, and believe me, the payoff was worth it. The sheer disbelief etched on his face as each of his doubts was systematically dismantled one after another was something that I will reminisce about for the rest of my life. He got so worked up and went over and over the contract paper, trying to find out the loopholes or other illegal stuff. At last, after more than half an hour of struggle, conceded defeat and reluctantly gave his approval to sign the contract, wearing a mix of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Even after leaving the cafe, his eyes maintained the same wary gaze they had held since we departed our home. "Come on, Dad. Shouldn't you rinse your trust level in your son a little more?" I sighed, disappointment creeping into my words. "Your statement gives me more of a reason to not believe in the happenings in the past hour of my life," he responded, his tone tinged with skepticism. "Seriously? Stop it already. I know that my family didn't expect anything good from me. But this? He is going way overboard. Yet, this is not beyond my expectations, as things were never good when my father was around." As we exited the cafe, it seemed like my father was no longer holding back, so I opted to maintain silence as we made our way to the nearby bus stop. But just as we neared our destination, he abruptly stopped and turned to face me. "So what now, son?" His question hung in the air, his eyes darting towards my pants pocket momentarily. "Son, my ass. That is my money, old man." With my left hand, I snapped sharply, defensively guarding my pocket. "Do you hear it? My money." I added emphasis to the word money. "The content inside my pocket is the money cover that I earned with my sweat and blood." Tisk. What an ungrateful son. "Don't forget that I was the one who paid the entrance fee for the competition," he reminded me sharply. Yet, like hell. Don't pretend like you just gave it the moment I asked for. What about the beforehand promises and pleadings? What about cutting my monthly expenses as compensation? Wait. You are holding a grudge against me? Tisk, don't worry. I will buy a present for Komaki and Mom," I added, hoping to divert his attention away from my finances. Well, this should also make his mouth shut for a couple of minutes, as he doted on Komaki more than me. "And the rest?" He stressed the last part. "Shameless. Just like me. Guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Not a clue. But I know what is about to come from him. "Well, though I don't have much of a say since it is all yours, I suggest you to not yet. I know. Investments, girls, and alcohol should be avoided at all costs." I cut him off and finished on his behalf, successfully saving myself from a boring lecture. "These are the life lessons, my fath." No, not father. My mortal and eternal enemy, this life has put me under. Like, Watch out for those extortionists out to ruin your reputation, or that women who chat you up on the street are only interested in your wallet, or that investing in future funds is more or less a scam, or that to work is to lose. And there is only one doubt that rose in my head after hearing all this. Is this what you are supposed to teach a kid? Like hell, I am nothing but a loner. My ears have been bleeding from hearing the same thing ever since I was a kid. But what really made it awful was that almost all of that came from my father's own experience, so I couldn't ignore it completely either. However, enough was enough. I didn't want to hear it anymore. Amidst it all, my father called out to me in an odd soft tone. Son. I realized that my dear father was about to say something fatherly for once. Stop right there, old man. Don't say stuff that doesn't suit either of us. Tisk, you are such a wet blanket. Back to present. Now coming back to my house, the old man in discussion was still currently in his dreamland, indulging in sleep. Taking a cunning glance at him, I stepped out of the house instead of going in. That too with a slow moment so as not to disturb the head of the Hikigaya household just on paper, and I closed the door with painstaking slowness moments, ensuring it made no extra noise. Finally, I was out of my house, and taking a deep breath, I placed my hand on the door handle. I grasped it with every fiber of my being. Bang-ugh. Then, with a thunderous bang, I flung the door wide open, shouting at the top of my lungs. I am home. That noise was just for you. Rise and shine, father. Your lifetime achievement. Your great son has come home. And this is for my revenge. Whenever he left the house, he slammed the door as hard as he could, disturbing me when I dozed. A few minutes later. Sorry mom, my bad. Chapter 10, Ice Queen. Continuation. Next day. Hachiman's POV. *ahem, excuse me. I let out a soft cough as I cracked open the clubroom door, trying not to disturb the peace too much. Inside, Yukinoshita occupied her familiar spot, completely immersed in her book, much like the previous day. Hello, Yukinoshita. I nodded in her direction. No reply. Silence. All right then, deep in the reading zone, I see. I didn't really expect a full-on conversation, but a simple nod or hello back would have been nice, you know? Ugh, why do I feel like I am begging for attention here? However, what is she even reading? I couldn't help but sneak a peek at the book cover she was holding. What could be so captivating? After some effort, though not entirely, I caught glimpses of the book cover through the gaps between her fingers. Sigh. A defeated sigh greeted me. Why am I surprised? The book in Yukinoshita's hands features a black cat on its cover. Deciding not to mess with her reading vibe, I assumed the exact same position as the day before. Maybe a tad closer. Just a few inches, mind you. The clubroom exuded a calm and noiseless ambience, giving off an image of a library. It was so quiet, it felt almost criminal not to grab a book. So, I dug into my bag and found something unexpected. It was the sole non-curriculum-oriented book in my possession. The book cover had this moody vibe, all dark and somber, aptly symbolizing inner struggles and human existential exploration. Its title read, No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or be creeped out by it. Well, let's not dwell on it. After all, it's a book I picked up, so it can't be that bad, right? Shrugging off a wave of self-pity, I decided to forget about the last few minutes. Without delay, I began to peacefully skim through the first page of the book. A minute passed by swiftly. Well, hello, Hikigaya. Yukinoshita, who is now out of her reading trance, finally returned my salutation. I stayed silent, opting to ignore her. After all, a little pride never hurts anyone, right? Hikigaya. She called out again. The difference in her tone was heavenly. Although it was definitely not louder than the previous one, at the same time, it certainly did not carry the leeway to be taken lightly. Ignoring her once should be enough to make my point. I think. Can't you see I am reading a book? And I was quite into it, too. The words I chose have a clear indication, which conveys my intention. Surely she understood my unspoken request, but she didn't acknowledge it, choosing instead to act as if nothing had happened. You are more thoughtful than I expected you to be, Hikigaya. Perhaps you do possess some qualities of a decent human being. She made a sudden comment. I don't know about me, but you, Yukinoshita Yukino, should definitely be more thoughtful towards me. What are you talking about all of a sudden? I asked, thrown off by her shift in topic. She gave me a suspicious look for a moment, as if scanning for any signs of understanding. Then, with an exasperated sigh, she said, "Leave it be. It was nothing important." "What now? Leave it be? How am I supposed to do that? It was the first compliment." "Wait, was it a compliment? Or not? Hey now, how do you expect me to leave it there? Don't I at least deserve an explanation?" After a few seconds of silence, she finally opened her light lips and said, "What I meant to say was that, while I do appreciate your consideration, there's no need for formalities every time you walk in. You are now an official member and possess the same rights as I do, so feel at ease. Just be mindful not to go too far, and, try to act somewhat human." She concluded with a hint of caution. When the last comment landed, I couldn't contain my laughter. Ha 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 ha. Am I laughing? You bet I am. What? You thought I didn't know how to laugh? Well, now you know. That was it, hey? It happened so long ago that I didn't even click in until now. But why does everyone seem to have an issue with my simple etiquette? I mean, is knocking before barging into a room that much of a big deal? Maybe it's just because nobody expects it from me. It's like being polite is a foreign language coming from my direction. Well, whatever it is, it's definitely an interesting spot to be in. Hikigaya, I am surprised to witness your capability for laughter. Yukinoshita remarked. Why, feeling a bit envious? Don't be. I can give you some pointers. It's not too hard once you grasp the basics. I replied, grinning. Is that intended to be an offer? She asked sarcastically, raising an eyebrow. Nah, never mind. There is no way the Royal Majesty Yukinoshita has anything to learn from a mere commoner like me. Do you have a talent for getting on people's nerves? Shrugging my shoulders, I said. Well, I have been told I have my moments. Anyway, I will take your offer. And about my outburst earlier, I couldn't help it when I noticed your pattern of starting with praise and ending with an insult. It's almost like you didn't want to make a good impression. I added under my breath, hoping to fly under her radar. Yukinoshita's tone remained neutral. I don't seem to recall ever asking for an explanation. Yeah, I figured you wouldn't want one, so that's why I spilled. I retorted. Hikigaya, I find your situation really bizarre. Do you? I replied, feigning innocence. I mean, you clearly have a way with your words. Which is why I don't understand how you justify your claim of not fitting in with youth. That's deep, Yukinoshita. I said, smugly rubbing my nose. But yet, it's true I have the ultimate skill gift of the gab. Which can be considered a top-tier skill one can have to make friends and relationships. You have a weird way of boosting yourself. She remarked dryly. It's not weird. It's just a bit unique. I shot back. Anyway, you acknowledge your current isolation is by choice rather than incapability. She continued. I leaned back, considering her words. No, I wouldn't say it's entirely my choice. Yeah, this solo player tag of mine was originally not my decision. I was forced into it by the people around me. But I am certainly capable of playing a different role, so it's like initially, it wasn't my decision, but now it is for some odd reason. But I can't come out clean, so giving a vague reply was the best I could do. Keeping the last part to myself, I carried out my explanation. Sure, if I intend to, I could probably get rid of my loner status, but I think it's too late, dash. And not worth the effort. How so? Well, you see, there won't be any genuine appreciation for my presence. I will be an outsider who barged in just a couple of days ago. At best, they categorize me as a decent guy to hang out with. Nothing more, like a new player crashing a high-ranking party. I rambled on, my instincts taking over. But, ignoring it, I continued. Anyway, some new player might be okay with being carried on back off pro play, asterisk cough, asterisk cough, asterisk cough. Crap, I did it again. What I am saying is, some might be satisfied with that, or they might not even realize it themselves. However, I am neither of those. So, I would rather be alone than be somewhere where my presence isn't valued. Yukinoshita responded thoughtfully. Although I didn't understand a few parts, I must admit that it is indeed deep. But please, you don't get the wrong idea that I am appreciating your presence, do you? That's for you to think. I thought to myself as I understood her words about my behavior, which I showed her. I smirked internally. Hey, valued doesn't necessarily mean appreciated. It's just being genuine about their feelings about me. No fakes. Whether it is a feeling of disgust, annoyance, irritation, hate, loathe, or resentment. I locked eyes with her and answered her previous question. And you, Yukinoshita, if there is anything even I admire about you, it is that you speak exactly what's in your mind. That's quite the insight you have drawn from me. I was convinced that you would propose to me in the flow. Yukinoshita raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a faint smile. I chuckled, shaking my head. Hat, how many times have you been proposed to with the classic line "I like how you speak your mind" for you to make that assumption? More times than I care to count. Do guys actually enjoy being verbally roughed up? Like, do they have a masochistic streak or something? I leaned forward, my tone playful. No, they're often driven by the desire to garner respect from their peers when someone like you dates them. It's just one of those peculiar male things to do, you could say. You have once more demonstrated the capacity for folly that some males possess. Yukinoshita responded dryly. What, are you disappointed that I haven't proposed like those guys? How were you raised to be this naive? Did you believe every day was your birthday? Or that Santa Claus was your secret admirer? Yukinoshita. You are abnormal. Your self-confident behavior is even more so. I mean, I, for one, consider myself quite confident, yet I am nothing in front of you. Moreover, your frankness freaks me. Strange. Just before, you mentioned that my frankness is precisely what prompted your current behavior. Yukinoshita mused. What's there to think so deeply about? Just leave it be. Sometimes words and actions don't align. You said I was abnormal, didn't you? I am thinking in what way I am. Gosh, this girl. Really? She is actually reflecting on my words. Hey Yukinoshita, you are also a loner, aren't you? I know she is, but I need to play along. That came out of nowhere. She asked, a little flustered and taken aback. Well, if you weren't a loner, you wouldn't give a damn about what some random guy you met just a day ago says. Nobody is perfect. Everyone possesses their own share of flaws and imperfections. Unlike you, I aspire to continuously better myself compared to yesterday. Yukinoshita replied. See, my senses never lie. About what? Yukinoshita averted her eyes in displeasure and played dumb. Just give up. My skill, all-seeing eyes of God has already deemed you a loner. You mean your loner senses? She retorted, trying to get a rise out of me. I can't argue with that. But Yukinoshita, the ice queen of Sobu High School, is actually a loner? Asterisk chuckle, color me surprised. Ice queen? Don't give me weird nicknames, Hikigaya. For some reason, her tone was not as angry as her words let her be. She continued. And Hikigaya, you don't seem surprised that I don't have any friends. Chapter 11, Uegahama Ui. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. You mean your loner senses? She retorted, trying to get a rise out of me. I can't argue with that. But Yukinoshita, the ice queen of Sobu High School, is actually a loner? Asterisk chuckle, color me surprised. Ice queen? Don't give me weird nicknames. For some reason, her tone was not as angry as her words let her be. She continued. And Hikigaya, you don't seem surprised that I don't have any friends. Surprisingly, despite expecting her to be annoyed by my bringing up her loner status, her tone remained relatively calm. But she really doesn't want to admit it, huh? I thought, noticing how she avoided the term loner and instead chose to say, I don't have a friend. I mean, it's a bit childish, but hey, I am not complaining. Yet, I am not surprised. Yukinoshita, you're almost too perfect to be real. Excelling in academics, sports, and, let's not forget, you are beautiful. Overall, your social standing is undeniably high. All in all, I could say that you are a Conqueror League player. I remarked, recalling her impressive achievements. Which is something I could ever dream of achieving in the past. If I had encountered someone of that league before, I would rather not cross paths with them. I continued. And believe it or not, I understand how pitiful human nature can be. They can't handle seeing someone superior, especially when they are the same age or even younger. I just can't fathom how troublesome it is to deal with that situation. You must have gone through a lot. As I finished speaking, I realized I had rambled on more than intended. Hikigaya. She continued after a brief pause, her tone casual but carrying a hint of playfulness. I was convinced you were going to propose this time, for sure. Her words were meant to be taken lightly, but they still held a certain charm coming from her. Before responding, I shifted my chair towards Yukinoshita, trying to get a better look at her. Summoning my most serious expression, I warned. You shouldn't speak those words lightly, Yukinoshita. Who knows, I might just take you up on it next time. Yet, I am speaking the truth. If she teases me again, who knows what might happen next. Even now, if it weren't for my high mental fortitude, I have honed through several setbacks in my life. I might have given in just now. Sure. She responded calmly, meeting my serious gaze with her own composed demeanor. Yukinoshita closed her eyes briefly, as if pondering over my words. Then, after clearing her throat, she spoke. Regardless, I am surprised you were able to understand all that without even being told. You are quite the perceptive one. I am sure I wouldn't understand if I hadn't received these memories. However, there is no way I could play ignorant once I do know. Nothing to be surprised about. You simply need to recognize that everything has its own ugly and good side. Nonetheless, people frequently choose to overlook one of the two aspects. Yukinoshita nodded in agreement, her expression serious. That is why I am going to change this world and the people in it. Her eyes held an intense seriousness, devoid of any warmth and radiating a coldness that could chill you to the bone, much like the piercing cold of dry ice, yet her determination was clear as day, shining through with an unwavering resolve that hinted at the depths of her ambition. Changing the world, huh? Well, that's insane. Wait. The person who is going to be her partner also needs to accompany her on this global quest of hers, right? Should I give a second thought to joining her party? Nope, it's too late for that. Smiling genuinely not fully, I said. You are quite the greedy one, Yukinoshita Yukino. Anyway, I wish you the best of luck in your endeavor. Thank you. She replied a little tentatively, taken aback by my unexpected support. As our conversation ended, Yukinoshita returned her attention to her book. The silence between us was strangely comforting. Knock. But then, our peaceful moment was interrupted by a timid knock on the door. Yukinoshita paused, bookmarking her page, before looking to me for confirmation. I nodded in response. Who could it be? Is it her? Was it already her time to make her appearance? I wondered. But more than that. I was honestly a little pissed for disturbing my solace. Come in. Yukinoshita called, facing the door. Excuse me. The door was then slid open only a little, so that a small gap was apparent. The girl slipped her body inside through the gap and entered the room. An action that could only mean she really didn't want anyone to see her come in. Her shoulder-length brown hair fell in loose waves as she nervously scanned the room, her eyes finally meeting mine. She let out a small shriek of surprise. Ah, Yukino, of course. I really don't have much to say about her. As far as I recall, she is nice and sincere, albeit a tad clumsy. Those traits seem to make her fit right in with the popular guys' party. Most importantly, she is a good friend to Yukinoshita, or at least, she is on her way to becoming one. Why is Hiki here? She exclaimed, her expression resembling that of someone who had just seen a ghost. Isn't that an odd question coming from the one who approached my home base? Shouldn't it be the other way around? I am the vice president of this club. So of course I am here. I declared, rising from my chair with a smug grin. Ignore him. Yukinoshita interjected as I nonchalantly pulled up a chair from the stack and offered it to Yukino. You are Yukino from Class 2F, correct? Have a seat. Without even an ounce of respect for the random act of my chivalry, Yukinoshita added, arranging a chair and motioning for her to sit. Why, you know who I am. Her face, Yukino, suddenly lit up when her name was called as she accepted her offer and sat down quietly. It was like being known by Yukinoshita gave you some kind of boost to her status in social circles. You certainly know a lot. Did you also happen to know me before I joined the club? I asked Yukinoshita with a curious tone, wanting to know what kind of reply she would come up with. Not at all. I am unaware of your existence. She replied with a neutral expression, seemingly unaffected by my question. Yet, I am buying that. Is that so? I tailed off with a tone that expressed my exact intentions. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her statement. Unsurprisingly, Yukinoshita, for sure, caught on to both my actions and expression. And just as she was about to retort, I muttered quietly. It seems I overestimated her observation skill. She is still lacking. I made sure to emphasize the last part. And this small muttered comment of mine grabbed her attention. In a bad way. Even though my voice was low, it was still audible enough to reach everyone in the room, or at the very least the most important one certainly did. Yukinoshita's previously indifferent expression turned icy as she flipped her hair over her shoulder, ready to respond. Hikigaya. Did you? But I didn't let her finish. I cut her off mid-sentence. Oops, did I say that out loud? My bad. I feigned innocence, earning a sharp look from Yukinoshita. Her glare could have frozen lava. She is a fiery one, for sure. Yukinoshita Yukino didn't like one thing the most, and that was to be looked down upon, and I did just that. But she can't deny my unintentional claims that I let out unknowingly. As she already stumbled the moment, she claimed that she didn't know of my existence just now. Me, Hikigaya Hachiman, a person, ranked 5th amongst the second-year students. A competitive person like herself doesn't know this fact? Like hell. And don't forget, there is one more identity of mine, which I am sure she will never forget for the rest of her life. This sorta, seems like a really fun club. And Hiki, I can't believe you are actually talking and stuff. Yuigahama said, breaking the tension with a smile, her twinkling eyes sweeping over Yukinoshita and me. That's because I only talk with a few deserving people. I responded. Yuigahama's smile faded into a frown. That's kinda rude, Hiki. What, are you my mom or something? She pressed on. Is this why you don't have any friends in class? I mean, you are, less creepy now than before, but you are still, acting kinda weird. This chick. That's none of your business. And you don't have the right to call me rude. Besides, who are you calling Hiki? Calling a person creepy at a first meeting is what I call being rude. After a small pause, I went on. Just say why you are here, and if you have nothing, then leave. I said it up front. Loud and clear. However, there is no malice behind it. Just straightforward. Hey, I was about to say. Yuigahama exclaimed, clearly feeling a bit put off by my interruption. She let out a defeated sigh before finally getting to her point. I heard this from Ms. Hiratsuka, but this club fulfills students' desires, right? Sorry, wrong information. We don't fulfill anyone's wishes here. I interjected bluntly. Yukinoshita completely ignored me and chose to address Yuigahama's question more diplomatically. I believe it differs a little. Ultimately, the aim of this club only lies in lending people a hand. Whether or not that fulfills your desires depends upon you. Her response was as calculated and precise as ever, delivering the truth without sugarcoating it. Talk about an icy rebuttal. Even colder than mine. How is it different? Yuigahama asked, her expression reflecting her curiosity. Would you give a hungry man a fish, or would you teach him how to fish? That is where the difference lies. Essentially, a volunteer does not provide results but a methodology. I suppose to encourage independence would be the most accurate answer. Yukinoshita explained, her words sounding like they were lifted straight from a moral philosophy textbook. That's kinda really awesome. Yuigahama exclaimed with a look that said, you opened my eyes, so I totally get it now. Although I cannot say for sure that I will fulfill your wishes, I will help you as much as I can. Yukinoshita promised, her tone softening just a bit. I was kind of thinking about making some cookie. Yuigahama started, her words trailing off as she shot a quick glance at me. She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Well, someone is feeling awkward. Sensing the tension, I stood up. Yukinoshita, I think I will go buy some Max coffee. Do you want any? Look at me being considerate, picking up on the vibe, and making a discreet exit. I self-praised myself as I was about to wander out of the room. I will have a strawberry mix. As I put my hand on the door to leave, Yukinoshita called out to me. I turned back and nodded to her. Sure. Slide. I slid the door open, and just as I was about to step out, something came to mind. Without turning back, I said, waving my hand. Oh, Yukinoshita. I wasn't joking when I said I would teach you how to laugh more often. Thud. Chapter 12, First Quest. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. I will have a strawberry mix. As I put my hand on the door to leave, Yukinoshita called out to me. I turned back and nodded to her. Sure. Slide. I slid the door open, and just as I was about to step out, something came to mind. Without turning back, I said, waving my hand. Oh, Yukinoshita. I wasn't joking when I said I would teach you how to laugh more often. Thud. Having no intention of hearing her reply, I closed the door after I was done saying what I had. But I could still hear their faint conversation as I continued to walk down the empty corridor. What does he mean, Yukino? And nothing. Sure. After some time. Hachiman's POV. Normally, it wouldn't take more than 10 minutes to get from the third floor down to the first and back up again in the special building. But because I was strolling at an extremely leisurely pace, I ended up taking way longer than that. Well, hopefully, their chat would be wrapped up by the time I made it back. Outside the school canteen, there's this vending machine. I fed in 100 yen coin after another, snagging 3 different drinks. I grabbed a max coffee and a strawberry mix for me and Yukinoshita, while the third drink is an orange flavor for the orange Yukigaya. I mean, it would feel kinda weird if only 2 out of 3 of us had something to sip on. So, I thought, we might as well cover all bases. The total tab for the drinks clocked in at 300 yen. Just to be clear, I am just laying out the facts here. I am not being stingy. Definitely not when it comes to the cash I rake in. So, nope, not at all, stingy. You're late. Yukinoshita complained as soon as I entered the room. But before I could offer an excuse, she snatched the strawberry mix from my grasp, plunged a straw into it, and started drinking. All that was left were the max coffee and orange juice. Oh right. Yukigaya, who realized that the latter was for her, said, pulling 100 yen coin out of a pocket-like coin purse. Don't worry. Since you are our first client, it's on the clubhouse. I walked away, placing the orange juice in her hand. The words I uttered are like a spell that someone as low resistance stats as Yukigaya can't really refute. I ensured she wouldn't feel any debt towards me, all the while conveying that I was merely doing it because she just happened to be our first client. Thanks. She expressed her gratitude in a small voice, laughing a little joyfully as she shyly held the drink in both hands. Done chatting. Taking a sip from the drink, I asked in the direction of Yukinoshita while leaning back against the wall beside the window, feeling my hair flow. Mostly. Yukinoshita said. That's good. So, what are you going to do now? I nodded in agreement. We are going to the home economics room. You are coming with us. Yukinoshita declared, taking another sip of juice. The home economics room? What are we going to do there? I probed. Cookies. I want to bake some cookies. Yukigaya muttered from the side. Cookies, hey. It was the only response I could give her, so I looked in Yukinoshita's direction for confirmation. It's the same reason she had in the show, hey? It appears that Yukigaya wants to make homemade cookies for someone. However, she has no confidence in her ability and would like some help. That is her request. Yukinoshita explained, clearing my doubt. And you plan to accept? I confirmed. I already accepted. Don't I get any say in this? Is what I want to ask, but, you know? Well, I sure can't cook, as I don't have any exceptional skills related in cooking class apart from a couple of short and quick breakfasts. So all I can do is support you from the sidelines. And if you want, I could take on the role of judge. With the president having already given her word, I extended my offer to assist. Thanks. Yukigaya gave a sigh of relief. That should do it. I wasn't really expecting anything with regards to your cooking ability. Yukinoshita commented. Good. Then I will go ahead and make whatever arrangements I am aware of. You guys catch up. I said, tossing my empty max coffee into the trash and heading off. Hikigaya, you seem surprisingly committed to putting in some work into the club. Don't tell me you actually think that you stand a chance in Ms. Hirotsuka's challenge. Yukinoshita questioned with a challenging tone. Come on, Yukinoshita. If you have already made up your mind to praise me, can't you be more direct with it? I grumbled, sounding disappointed. I continued. And why wouldn't I be committed when the reward for clearing the main quest is tempting? She sighed. Sometimes I wonder if you have ever been right about anything in your life. Sure. I will go ahead. You guys follow up. I said, leaving the conversation behind as I headed out. After 45 minutes. Hachiman's POV. How about Yukino never cooks again? I suggested analyzing the cookies that resemble charcoal they sell at hardware stores made by Yukino on her first attempt. I have been completely rejected. Yukino cried, looking wounded. Hikigaya, that would be our last resort. Yukinoshita interjected. Last resort? So that's actually an option. Yukino's shock quickly turned to despair. Hiki, why don't you take a bite? Yukino suggested with puppy dog eyes, and the orange apron she wore only made it difficult to reject. Yukinoshita also put on an apron, in which she looked charming, and it also gave her this certain homely image. Anyway, going back, a beautiful girl such as Yukino is offering me her homemade cookies? If I were any less cautious, I might have taken the bullet happily. Sorry, Yukino, my hunger stats are full. I declined, not willing to risk a KO here. Wait, what? Leave it be, Yukino. He is spouting nonsense again. Yukinoshita said dismissively. Yukino's shoulders dropped, crestfallen, as she let out a deep sigh. I guess cooking just isn't for me after all. Would you call it a talent? A talent that I just don't have. True. Yukino's cooking skills were severely lacking. No, it would be better to say that she never had any skills to begin with. She is also beyond clumsy. By the time the thing was done baking, it had become some kind of completely charred hot cake. The bitter smell alone was a dead giveaway. Yukinoshita let out a short sigh in response. I see. I have thought of a solution. What? By working harder. I chuckled, knowing exactly where this was headed. Correct. Just as that overly smart and unnecessary existence stated. The only solution is to try harder. Yukinoshita agreed with me. She did, right? Hey, that's mean. I protested. Yukino. You said that you don't have any talent, didn't you? Yukinoshita redirected her attention to her. Yet. Just so you know, ignoring doesn't count as winning. I interjected, feeling frustrated. It was the third time already, and I am certain this cycle of being ignored will go on, but I want to get this out of my mouth for the bare minimum. However, Yukinoshita once again brushed off my comment and continued. Please rid yourself of that idea. Those who do not exert the least amount of effort are unqualified to envy the talented. Those who struggle to succeed are unable to succeed and will often fail to grasp the painstaking accumulation of hard work by those who do. Yukinoshita's words were bitter, and somehow it felt like they were pointed at me. Yukino was left speechless. An expression of bewildered panic crossed her face until she covered it up with a grin and muttered. People don't really do this sort of thing these days. It definitely doesn't suit me, not at all. Please stop trying to conform to those around you. It's terribly unpleasant. Isn't it embarrassing to place the blame for your lack of ability, your clumsiness, and your foolishness on others? Yukinoshita's voice was strong and harsh. Even I was taken aback and, for a second, believed that she was genuinely disgusted. So? Yukino stammered, her head hanging in defeat. So? What? So cool! She suddenly exclaimed, lifting her head with admiration shining in her eyes. Hey! Yukinoshita and I chorused. What the heck was this girl saying? We both inadvertently exchanged looks. You really just say it straight. And that's just, well. It's really cool. Yukino was eager as she stared at Yukinoshita. Just what are you saying? Did you even hear me? I am fairly certain my words were quite harsh. Yukinoshita replied, her expression stiffening as she took a step back. Chapter 13, Making Cookies. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. So cool! She suddenly exclaimed, lifting her head with admiration shining in her eyes. Hey! Hey! Yukinoshita and I chorused. What the heck was this girl saying? We inadvertently exchanged looks. You really just say it straight. And that's just, well. It's really cool. Yuigahama was eager as she stared at Yukinoshita. Just what are you saying? Did you even hear me? I am fairly certain my words were quite harsh. Yukinoshita replied, her expression stiffening as she took a step back. No way. Not at all. Yuigahama insisted, maintaining her strangely positive manner. Yukinoshita. As far as I know, being harsh won't even be enough to describe your hurtful words right now. But why is she praising you? What did you do to her? I asked, genuinely confused. Wait, she isn't into that type of thing, is she? Masochistic tendencies, I mean. I didn't do anything. Yukinoshita expressed her perplexity at the turn of events. Yuigahama then explained her perspective. Well, what I mean is, your words were harsh, and honestly, I was a little taken aback. But I really think you were just being honest with me. I mean, even when you were talking to Hiki, you two were only exchanging mean things, but you talked to each other properly. I have only ever tried to fit in and say what was expected of me, so this is a first for me. I learned two new things about Yuigahama. First, she is not into masochism, obviously. And second, she is dumb and really bad with her words. Like, really bad. I am sorry. I will do it again properly. Once she had apologized, she faced Yukinoshita head-on. This time, it was me and Yukinoshita who were at a loss for words. Yukinoshita let out a short sigh and nodded in assent. Gathering my thoughts, I decided to break the silence. Actually, the problem isn't with Yuigahama. It's with you, Yukinoshita. However, I approached the situation in the worst way possible. For real, me. It was even more clear to me as I witnessed the annoyance brewing in Yukinoshita's gaze, ready to erupt. Whoa! Hold on there, Yukinoshita. Realizing the way I phrased my words and the wrong impression they left, I tried to find my way out. Shut up, Hikigaya. She snapped. Come on, hear me out. I think I figured out the problem. I persisted, hoping to salvage the situation. You did. Yukinoshita raised an eyebrow suspiciously. When I said it straight, clearing my inventions, looking into Yukinoshita's eyes, I heard a gasp from the side. Yuigahama was probably concerned that we might end up fighting. Hikigaya. Explain. As I expected, Yukinoshita, though surprised, simply sharpened her eyes. Yep, nothing serious. Now I just need to give her a proper reason for my claims. If not. Yukinoshita. You just can't think from your perspective. To be frank, you are a genius. I mean, at the very least, I am sure you are far better than Yuigahama could ever be on her first try. Therefore, there is no way you could even begin to understand the feelings of normal people. Meaning, you just can't understand why Yuigahama can't understand. In the end, no matter how many times you instruct her, she won't be able to do it. Though I can't agree completely, you have a few valid points. Yukinoshita acknowledged. Then she continued. So, what do you suggest we should do now? How would I know that? I shrugged. You are a real letdown, Hikigaya. Yukinoshita sighed, disappointed. Hey, I never said I have a solution. I only said I understood the problem. I defended myself. I attempted to change the topic of the decision to the problem we had in our hands. Yukinoshita. This time around, don't simply instruct Yuigahama. You both make them at the same time. I will start making. Yuigahama, you follow right behind and try to make it exactly like I do. Yukinoshita stood up and quickly began preparations, and Yuigahama followed suit. A short time later, unlike the first time when Yuigahama alone made the cookies, the room was filled with an ineffably nice smell. However, whether this smell is coming from one or both of the plates in the oven is what determines the status of the quest. Thud. When the oven was opened, a nice aroma emerged, closely resembling normal cookies. However, they are somehow different. Despondent, Yuigahama's shoulders dropped. No, they are worlds apart. One does not require an expert to see the difference between the cookies on two different plates, which are in fact made at the same time and following the exact same steps. I mean, the cookies baked by Yukinoshita were a sight to see as she put them onto plates, while Yukigaya was far better than the first attempt but stood no chance against her. How should I instruct you when you couldn't make it at least presentable even after you were right behind a step with me? Puzzled, Yukinoshita tilted her head in thought. Cute. Compared to that charcoal-like thing before, they were so much better. I remarked, offering my opinion. Well, this time around, I can't even blame it on Yukinoshita. On Yukigahama's first failed attempt, baking cookies following Yukinoshita's instructions from the side was still understandable. But she even failed while both of them were doing it at the same time. I can't believe you still somehow messed up. Yukinoshita sighed in exasperation. Yep, the ones Yukinoshita baked were beautiful, light brown, and definitely what one would call cookies. They were well made, just like my aunt's cookies. They deserved gratitude. As soon as I took a beautiful light brown cookie baked by Yukinoshita and put it in my mouth, my face naturally broke into a smile. So good. What kind of patissier are you? I let my true impression slip, and I couldn't stop my hands, so I put another one in my mouth. It was delicious, of course. I don't know when I will be granted an experience like this, eating Yukinoshita's handmade cookies again, so I took the opportunity to put another one in my mouth. Yukinoshita, mind doing it for the rest of my life? I said it in flow, but man, this sounds like a marriage proposal. But there was no reaction, and it seemed like no one had noticed my slip-up. I would rather stop cooking for the rest of my life. Yukinoshita replied with a hint of annoyance. Well, it seems she did hear me. Hey, no need for such world-ending decisions. We can negotiate. I suggested. With an angry snort, Yukinoshita turned her head in the opposite direction, signaling the end of any further discussion. So, what now, pack up? I announced, only to be glared at by Yukinoshita for creating an awkward atmosphere. Why am I the bad guy? Someone needs to say it. In fact, I should be showered with gratitude for a noble sacrifice. I cursed my loose mouth. Hey President, what's the call then? I muttered slowly, knowing full well that this situation wouldn't proceed unless I made another sacrifice. Sigh, Yukigaya. It is your call. Give up or not? I really don't want to give up. She muttered in a weak voice. God, this is making me frustrated. Why go so far for someone you don't even know whether they are going to appreciate your efforts or not? She is unknowingly guilt-tripping, making me feel bad and leaving a bad taste in my mouth. That settles, then. Yukinoshita. Are we really doing this? In a rather exhausted voice, I inquired about it. It seems I am causing trouble. Sorry about that. Don't give me that painful laugh, girl. You are dealing a lot of damage to my mental stats. Say, Yukigaya, you are making these cookies for someone, right? I questioned. Why yet? She replied tentatively. Seeing her panicked reply, I responded. Don't worry, I won't ask you who exactly it is for or what their gender is. However, I am assuming it's for a guy. Man, I love acting like a detective at a time like this. I continued. And if my assumption happens to be correct, I have an important piece of advice. In case my assumption is incorrect, then simply ignore what I am about to say. Hikigaya, sometimes you are painstakingly considerate of others. Yukinoshita commented. Ignoring her comment, I continued. Ahem, here it is. Both of you should pay close attention. I am willing to share one of my treasured insights with you about us, the male. You see, by nature, males are helplessly simple creatures, especially when it comes to the opposite sex. It's not about the cookies you have baked specifically. Even if it's something else, it doesn't have to be perfect or delicious. What matters most is showing your willingness. Remember, your goal isn't to show off your cooking skills but to demonstrate the lengths to which you are willing to go for them. So. I paused to observe Yukigaya. Those cookies aren't really anything special. They are a little hard to bite here and there, but to be honest, it's fine even if they aren't that tasty. They don't have to taste good. Yukinoshita muttered to herself. Does this also apply to you, Hiki? I mean, if I give these to you, will you like it? This girl. She is testing the depth of the water way too deeply. Yet, if it's just cookies, I will probably take it. Since I clearly see the effort you put in, I will definitely appreciate it. I replied instantly. Ah. Okay. Yukino replied nonchalantly, her attention already drifting towards the door. She reached for the handle, ready to leave, but Yukinoshita intercepted. Yukino, what should we do with your request? She inquired. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Next time, I will try my own way. Thank you, Yukinoshita. Yukino replied with a smile, turning to face Yukinoshita. Catch you later. Yukino called out cheerfully as she left the room, her apron still tied around her waist. That idiot! I muttered, watching her exit. I wonder if that really went okay. Yukinoshita stared at the door and whispered to herself. I think that people should try to reach their own limits and surpass them. That would be what's best for Yukino in the long run. True. I chimed in, adding my perspective. But I don't think that applies here, Yukinoshita. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine if I tried to sell sweaters in the desert. I put all my effort into it, making sure they're the best quality, perfect fit, amazing design basically, I work my ass off. Would you say I deserve to succeed? After a small pause, I clarified. Definitely not, because that would just be plain silly. Effort is crucial, but it is equally vital to assess if it is being invested wisely. Underestimating the value of your own efforts is akin to underestimating oneself. Elaborating on my point, I continued. The same goes for Yukino. She is not aiming to become a master chef, so why spend time and energy on something that's not important? It's better to put that effort where it's actually needed. Yukinoshita countered. But what if cooking becomes necessary for her someday? That's why we have people around us, Yukinoshita. You helped her today, didn't you? I explained. I can't believe something like this is coming from my mouth, but I really do think it is not bad to rely on your people, especially if you have someone as competent and reliable as Yukinoshita. And don't be mistaken, dependent and reliable aren't the same thing. I continued. And if no one else is available, there is always the option to buy it. Plus, like I said before, it doesn't have to be tasty. The wind caressed Yukinoshita's face as she turned toward me. Her hair was swaying gently in the breeze. Just then, the door swung open with a bang, revealing Yukino's return. Sorry. She muttered, sneaking into the room to return the apron silently, casting a fleeting glance at us before disappearing again. She isn't thinking of some weird stuff, is she? Before I could dwell on it further, Yukinoshita interjected. But Hikigaya, deserts can get surprisingly cold at night due to the rapid temperature drop, so selling sweaters might not be such a bad idea after all. She pointed out. Seriously, this girl. Just when I was feeling pretty cool about myself, she had to come and rain on my parade. With a sigh, I attempted to clarify. Yukinoshita, don't take my words as they are. Just understand what I am saying, can't you? It was more like a phrase of words. Scene end. AI author information. Pâtissier equals a pastry chef or pâtissier. The French female version of the word is pâtissière, is a stationed chef in a professional kitchen, skilled in the making of pastries, desserts, breads, and other baked goods. Chapter 14, Background Nuisance. Continuation. Next day. Service Club. Hachiman's POV. Hey Yukinoshita, are you listening? I questioned with a dragged voice. For now, I am not looking at her, so I was really clueless as to whether she was paying attention to what I was saying or not. Silence hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. Came her eventual response, leaving me to decipher what it should mean. Well, at least she wasn't completely ignoring me like she had been this entire time. We both occupied our usual spots in the room. Should I mention my chair is again a bit closer to yesterday? I glanced over at her, hoping for some confirmation of her attention, only to find her immersed in a book. Her eyes were fixed downward, intently reading the pages laid open in her lap. Is she multitasking? I am impressed. So, where was I? I mumbled to myself, trying to recollect my train of thought. Oh right, I opened the door with a loud bang that jolted the old man awake. I continued, recounting the events of a few days ago, precisely 2 days. That isn't an appropriate way to refer to your father, Hikigaya. Yukinoshita interjected suddenly, catching me off guard and breaking her own silence. You wouldn't say that if only she knew half of my family dynamics, which are far from the norm. Physical abuse was just one missing element from the list. No. Nowadays, I think even that was added, considering all the chores and more heaped upon me like I was some servant. Well, maybe I am exaggerating this part. Changing the subject, I added. Anyway, thanks for the cookies yesterday. Kamiki really enjoyed them. It felt like an opportune moment to express my gratitude towards Yukinoshita. So you were successful in your endeavor of deceiving your sister about having an unexisting friend who was kind enough to give homemade cookies. My not-so-genuine intentions of expressing gratitude were mocked by Yukinoshita. Nothing unexpected, I guess. I thought while thinking back how I was the one who asked her permission to grant my little sister a chance to taste her futu ****. Let's leave it at that. No need to put it that way. I am simply informing you that she wanted me to thank you. Concluding the conversation, we want to go back to our work. Reading books and constantly increasing my intelligence stats. Is this how it feels to be in a club? Definitely not. I mean, I am pretty sure if Ms. Hirotsuka hadn't sent Yuigahama to this clubroom yesterday, no one would even bother to look at this isolation ward. After all we do is read our own books. No, I am not complaining. In fact, I like how it is now. There were still no customers, but business was open as usual. Yukinoshita and I were both the sort who didn't mind silence, so the times we just put our all into reading, like we were now, were peaceful. Knock. That's exactly why that hard knock on the door echoed so loudly. Yeah, hello. Yuigahama Ui slid the sliding door open with a stupid, insipid greeting. Yukinoshita laid eyes on her, then gave a huge sigh, murmuring to herself. What do you want? Hey? Am I not really welcome here? Yukinoshita. Do you hate me? Yuigahama's shoulders began to tremble. Yukinoshita sighed as though she was thinking about it. Then she replied in a mundane voice. I don't particularly hate you. I just think you are a little hard to deal with. Agreed. When a girl says that, it means that she hates you. Her reaction was just what you would expect from a normal girl. So, do you need something? Yukinoshita asked, cutting to the chase. Well, you know how I have been really into cooking lately. Yuigahama replied with a hint of shyness. No, this is the first time I have heard that. Yukinoshita's response was as blunt as ever. Asterisk nod, this is just as, like, thanks for the other day, but I made some cookies. Hearing Yuigahama, the blood quickly drained from Yukinoshita's face. As their conversation became the main event in the clubroom, I activated my stealth skill to blend in the background with chairs. I apologize. I don't have much of an appetite right now, so I am fine, thank you. Your gratitude is enough. Yukinoshita had probably only lost her aptitude just now. Oh? What happened to her anticipated onslaught? Yukinoshita was thoughtful in not rejecting her outright. Nonetheless, Yuigahama, still oblivious to the blessing she received, continued humming contentedly as she took out a cellophane package from her bag. It was clearly a cutely packaged bag of blackened cookies. There was no stopping Yuigahama as she went on. Well, it's actually fun when you try it. Maybe I will try making lunch or something next. So anyway, Yukinon, let's eat lunch together. No. I like eating by myself, so I don't really want to. Also, please don't call me Yukinon. It makes me sick. Yukinoshita said with displeasure. Yuigahama, who was already adjusted to Yukinoshita's behavior, wasn't the least bit discouraged by her response. No way. Aren't you lonely? Yukinon, where do you eat lunch? Here, but... Hey, are you listening to me? Yukinoshita was starting to get restless. Ah, okay then, well. I am free after school, so I will help you with club activities. Well, like, you know. I am returning the favor? Yeah, I am returning the favor, so don't worry about it at all. Yuigahama tried to justify her reasoning. Are you listening to me? Yukinoshita was clearly lost in Yuigahama's constant waves of conversation. With a soft sigh, Yukinoshita looked at me from the corner of her eyes, as if to say, do something about her. However, I simply raised an invisible white flag in defeat and went ahead, trying to adjust my breathing to my surroundings. I really don't want to deal with Yuigahama. Do you now get it, Yukinoshita? What does it feel like to be ignored? But I have to admit they are an odd but nevertheless interesting pair, for sure. Surprisingly, Yukino was holding herself remarkably well. At one point, she seemed to have the upper hand in their exchange. I can go as far as to say she managed to push Yukinoshita into a tight spot with her barrage of quotes. Honestly, it's fair to say that Yukinoshita brought this upon herself, considering the sincerity she displayed yesterday while attempting to address Yukino's problem, so that's probably why she was trying so hard to pay her back. Therefore, Yukinoshita had the right and responsibility to accept her gratitude. Ah, Hiki. Yukino. Wait. My skill failed? Suddenly, I heard my name, and I raised my head from the book to see a blackened thing flying towards my face. Although, still surprised by the fact that I was seen through, I caught the package reflexively. I kinda need to thank you too, since you helped out as well. The package had something inside it. It was deep black and heart-shaped. How ominous. Thanks. Oh, and don't call me Hiki. Still, she was trying to thank me, so I accepted. Scene end. Next day. Class F. Hachiman's POV. The ringing chime signaled the end of 4th period, sending a wave of relief through the classroom. After my counseling session with Ms. Hirotsuka was over, I assumed that I would have a relatively peaceful and uneventful day ahead. But fate had other plans, and my luck ditched me again. Come on, Hayato. Miura. Nat, I can't do it today. I have practice. Hayato. Can't you just spare a day? Double scoops at Baskin-Robbins are on sale today. I want a chocolate cocoa double scoop. Miura. And as usual, the classroom of grade 11's class F, which unfortunately happened to be my class, was consumed by a grand lunchtime din. It was raining, so I found myself without a place to go. I usually had a perfect spot to eat lunch, but I had no interest in getting rained on as I ate. And so, left with no other choice, I sat in the classroom and ate my convenience store bread in silence. Beside that, Yumiko. If you eat too much, then you're gonna regret it, Hayato continued. You know, I never get fat no matter how much I eat. Miura. Yeah, totally, Miura. You are. Like, totally beautiful. And your legs are so pretty. But I have plans right now, so I have to, Yukino. My ears were starting to itch from all the background noise. Couldn't they tone it down a bit? Thankfully, I had come prepared, having learned from past experiences. I made sure to bring my earphones, which I was currently using to cancel all the superfluous background noise. So, one could argue that I was indeed enjoying my meal. Or, at least, that's what I wanted to believe. However, it seems that my earphones couldn't entirely mute the vexing voices of a specific group of individuals. Man, why is the noise cancellation technology in these earphones so bad? Stop. Stop. Didn't I buy the latest model out there on the market? So why do I feel like I used something even better than this? But before I give more attention to this unknown feeling, I was again disturbed by loud noises, and it was the same group as before. It is a pack of 4 boys and 3 girls. Oh, by the way, Yukino was part of that group. Maybe I should opt for playing some high bass music instead of simply playing some random, pleasant melody. Yep, that's it. Today's objective is to prepare a playlist of high bass music. Yeah, totally, Miura. You are like, totally beautiful. And her legs are so pretty. But I have plans right now, so I have to, Yukino. You think so? But don't you think that Yukinoshita or whatever is kind of pretty too? Miura. And, as you can, could hear in my background that even within that group, there were 2 individuals who were shining brighter than all the others. The goody two-shoes, Hayato Hayama, and the one with the most annoying voice I have ever encountered, Miura Yumiko. Now that the conversation is shifting towards Yukinoshita, the conflict should start to surface. I have to go somewhere for lunch, so, Yukino. Oh, really? Then make sure you buy some of that stuff when you get back. You know, that lemon tea? I totally forgot to bring something to drink today. And plus, I am having bread, so it's gonna be really rough if I don't have any tea, right? Miura. But I might not get back until 5th period, so lunch might have ended, and, you know, Yukino. As you might have also guessed, Yukino, who wanted to leave in accordance with her plans with Yukinoshita, had by now dealt with a lot of damage from High Queen Miura's relentless assaults, ultimately leading her to offer an apology. However, in my view, Uegahama is also somewhat at fault in this situation. If you have something to say it out loud and clear. Then again, I realize this might be construed as me imposing my preferences on others. Everyone has their own ways of handling things, whether I agree with them or not. And unlike me, Uegahama isn't a loner who doesn't care about social nuances. She has friends and relationships to maintain. Sorry, Uegahama. Don't just tell me sorry. You have something you want to say, don't you? Miura. I really thought long and hard about whether to involve myself in this rather trivial affair. But, welp, I can't just stand idly by any longer. I just hope this doesn't give any wrong ideas to a certain orange-haired girl. But who am I kidding? It definitely will cause a misunderstanding. Kick. I suddenly rose from my seat, kicked the table, and exclaimed. Eek! I can't stand this anymore. This is disgusting. *nom. Chapter 15, Uegahama's Stance. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. I really thought long and hard about whether to involve myself in this rather trivial affair. But, welp, I can't just stand idly by any longer. I just hope this doesn't give any wrong ideas to a certain orange-haired girl. But who am I kidding? It definitely will cause a misunderstanding. Scree. With sudden moments, I leaped up from my seat, causing the chair to screech across the floor. Kick. Then I unleashed a swift kick to the table, the sound echoing through the room as the impact reverberated. Eek! I can't stand this anymore. This is disgusting. *nom. I let out a disgusted exclamation, my voice a blend of frustration and annoyance. Despite the distaste I expressed, my hand acted on its own accord, darting out to grab the final piece of bread from the table. Nevertheless, I made sure to finish the last piece of bread in my hand without a care in the world. With little no concern for the mess I had just made, I brought it to my mouth, wolfing it down with no apologies whatsoever. Clap, clap. Disregarding the stunned expressions around me, I brushed off my hands, getting rid of any remaining crumbs with a casual flick of my fingers. I mean, this is so, *serp, horrible. I muttered almost to myself, the words a feeble attempt to rationalize my outburst, as I turned away from the group. I took a slow sip of my juice, making it clear just how unimpressed I was. Hey, what tea, Miura? But just as I was about to tune out completely, an incredibly irritating sound pierced the air, causing me to half-turn with a quick motion. With the straw still in my mouth, I shot a glare at the source of the disturbance, channeling all my annoyance and frustration into one intense gaze. Grrrrrrr. I growled, activating my mastered dead fish eyes skill, successfully conjuring the most irritated and disgusted expression I could, all while delivering it with another skill-vexed tone. I must confess, it's a formidable combo attack in my arsenal. Glare. In the midst of my intrusion, Miura directed a malevolent glare in my direction. Delusional. I thought with a wry smile. Should I be afraid and shiver in fear if you glare at me like that? Mind you, Yukinoshita has more intense and cold eyes. As all of this unfolded, the atmosphere in the classroom grew increasingly tense and heavy with each passing second, and I was the man responsible for it all. Miura, realizing her glare had little effect, began. What the heck However, before she had the chance to complete her warning, I was still activating the combo of mine. What? Wanna take a bite? Of course you won't, right? It's mine. Eehhhhhh. She turned her face away in disgust in response to my question. Well, that clarifies my doubts, I guess. I mean, thank God. Now, let's proceed with the performance. How can this bread and juice, of the same products from another store taste this, repulsive? I muttered under the watchful gazes directed at me as I headed straight for the room's exit. Is he talking about the food? Hayato loudly voiced the exact question I wanted to hear. However, just for the sake of it, I would like to believe he saw through my act and was evidently supportive. Because I knew he could and would be willing to. Nonetheless, with his words, all my curses will now be misdirected at the food I have consumed. In all honesty, it would have been a truly convincing misdirection, even for Hayato. Only if I had tossed the bread and juice into the trash can. However, there won't be any fun in it, would there? The fun lies in cursing the very same food while also eating. This would offer them an opportunity to sense that something is amiss, but with no concrete evidence. *Serb, maybe I shouldn't have fallen for the freebies and promotions. I remarked, facing the door in front. My words were a direct aim at the bit *High Queen Miura, who had been inviting Hayato for a shopping sale. Finally, I continued all the way, not forgetting to sip the juice in between. I can't believe that the shop owner had the audacity to even compare this, *Serb, junk to the food I consume regularly. People really ought to understand their place. How dare this bit *High Queen Miura measure herself against Yukinoshita? I mused, urging in my desire to turn around and observe their reactions. Rule, opening the door. Well, speak of the devil. Hey there, you are for Uegahama. As I slid the door open, Yukinoshita appeared right in front of me. I am. But it seems she is in a pinch. She pointed out as she looked over my right shoulder, viewing the nervous figure of Uegahama. Yeah, just as you guessed. Well, you take it from here and finish it. Walking past her, I said in a low but audible voice. You are quite confident that I will do so. You bet I am. I departed. Scene shift. After 2 minutes. It had been a couple of minutes since I successfully played out the scene exactly according to my screenplay and walked outside of the classroom as Yukinoshita took my place in sledging the by *Shy Queen Miura. You can huff and puff all you like, and you can act like you're the king of the castle, but please do that privately and on your own time. Otherwise, your little act will fall apart, just like your makeup is right now. Yukinoshita. Hey, what are you saying? I don't get it. Miura. Right as Yukinoshita launched her final words, Miura, sounding like a bit of a sore loser, finally seemed to collapse back down into her chair. I am going on ahead. Yukinoshita muttered, sensing Uegahama's thoughts, who was standing stock still while gripping her skirt hem tightly, as if she wanted to say something. I am coming too, Uegahama. Do as you please. Yukinoshita. Okay. Uegahama let out a smile. Thud. Deciding to give Uegahama the space she requires, Yukinoshita left the classroom and slid the door closed, only to see me leaning against the wall immediately beside the door, hands in pocket. Good job, Yukinoshita, you did well. I complimented her in a cheerful voice. Without responding, Yukinoshita calmly walked and leaned up against the window opposite me in a similar position. However, her arms flooded, and her eyes closed. Probably due to the heated conversation just now, she has an extremely cold aura around her. Since I was conscious of not disturbing her any further now, the corridor was very quiet, except for the sound of rain still pouring down. Nonetheless, we could hear the conversation happening inside the classroom. I am sorry. You know, I get a bit uneasy when I can't get along with someone. Or you could say I just get really self-conscious all of a sudden, so maybe you're annoyed by that. Uegahama. Miura. Well, how should I put it? I've always been like that. Even when we played house, I wanted to be the mother, but if someone else wanted to do it, I would be the dog and stuff. It might be because I grew up in a big apartment complex. Uegahama. I have no idea what you're trying to say. Miura. Tisk, B*tchy queen. I muttered, hearing that annoying voice, which had again gained some volume after Yukinoshita exited. You seem to be hating her. Yukinoshita case-tined. Down to my core. I don't want to waste my feelings on such unnecessary NPCs. However, I tried to be modest with my reply. Don't bother. I could clearly see it in your face. Now that I see it, she also seems to have cooled off the tense air she had before. Anyway, that was a pretty good heuristic argument, Yukinoshita. You think so? Definitely. So I thought, maybe I shouldn't try so hard. I will just take it a bit easier. Or something like that. But it's not like I hate Miura or something. We can still get along, a lot, after this, right? Uegahama. Humph. I see. Well then, whatever. That's fine. Miura. Sorry again. Thanks. Uegahama. And with that, the conversation in the room stopped, and I heard the pitter-patter of Uegahama's shoes walking towards us. Well, what do you know? She can stand up for herself. Taking that sound as a signal, Yukinoshita also stopped leaning on the wall and stood up to walk away. She sure can. For that brief moment, I witnessed a glimpse of a smile on Yukinoshita's face, taking me aback while my voice shuddered. It was a smile that was simple, pure, and devoid of mockery, sarcasm, or sorrow. Nonetheless, that smile soon vanished, leaving me in a state of complete mesmerization. Hikigaya, I am leaving, she informed me. However, she had a dubious look, maybe seeing me so unresponsive and staring right at her. Beautiful, I muttered slowly but clearly, looking right into her eyes. What are you talking about? I am Le. Disregarding her response in the middle, I added. Though it's disappointing that I am not the cause of it, your smile just now. It was the most beautiful I have ever seen. While still continuing my staring, trying to engrave that moment into memory. Yukinoshita was startled. What nonsense, AR. Rule. However, her words were once again disregarded as the classroom door opened. Why are Yukino and Hiki standing right here? Yuagahima's appearance made both of us stiff, while I was also brought out of my daze. But I managed to lift up my right arm and greet her, while Yukinoshita glanced at me dangerously for putting her in this situation. As we looked at Yuagahima's face, we could see she was getting redder and redder. Were you listening? Whatever could you mean? And why are you only looking at me? I pointed towards Yukinoshita, who was also standing still after failing to escape, because of me. You were listening, weren't you? You were eavesdropping. Gross. Stalker. Weirdo. So gross. I can't believe you. You're seriously gross. You're seriously, truly gross. Just hold on. Show some restraint. I mean, I am not the only one here. I countered, clearly dodging her punches. Humph, it's a bit too late for me to show restraint. And whose fault do you think that is? Idiot. Saying those words, Yuagahima joined Yukinoshita, hugging her arm and making her blush. Might be due to close contact. Whose fault? Hey Yukinoshita, say something, will you? I called out. Hey, don't ignore me. I complained while walking behind. No, I am not following them. I am simply heading towards the vending machine, which happened to be in the same direction. The only sweet thing in my life was the taste of this Max coffee. At least for now. Scene end. Chapter 16, Zaimokuza Yoshiteru. Continuation. Next day. Service Club. Hachiman's POV. Hikigaya, could I speak with you for just a moment? Could you believe who said this to me? Well, it was Yukinoshita Yukino herself who pulled on my sleeve to draw me aside and whispered in my ear. No. Unfortunately, it's not what you think. I still have a long way to go before I step into that territory. Anyway, I am not alone with her. We are in the service club room with Yukinoshita, Yuagahima, and guess who? The one and only Zaimokuza Yoshiteru. After pulling me aside, Yukinoshita brought her face close, way too close to my comfort zone, and there was this nice, soothing fragrance I couldn't help but notice. Hikigaya? Hikigaya? Yukinoshita's voice snapped me back to reality. Oops, got a little sidetracked there. Yeah, I hear you. I replied with a dry tone. Doubtful, she continued. That one over there seems to know you. After a pause, she inquired. Is he perhaps your friend? Friend, hey? Well, if I remember properly, according to the plot, he came here to ask us to review his light novel, right? Zaimokuza really chose the wrong place to seek help. Regrettably, true. Ah, and yes, I know him well enough and he does fall somewhere near the definition of a friend. I did not refute. I am surprised you accepted so easily. Yukinoshita. Believe me, it's not an easy decision, but... Looking at Zaimokuza, I take a small pause. And continued. He is a decent guy once you get to know him. Of course, with many screws loose here and there, as you can probably tell. No thanks. I will pass on the offer. Yukinoshita. Instant rejection, I see. Understandable, I guess. I mean, he is right in front of me, wearing a huge coat, making him sweat even in winter. By now, He has already damaged my already low reputation stats to even lower levels. Hold on, is that even possible? Anyway, what is up with this Master Fencer General or, whatever? Yukinoshita asked, ignoring her monotone voice. That is Chunibyu, also called 8th grade syndrome or even delusion of grandeur. Chunibyu. Yukinoshita repeated herself, looking at me with a slight head tilt. Cute. I couldn't focus. Her adorable face was inches from mine again, yet her voice lacked any hint of seductiveness. Damn it, Yukinoshita. Stop looking at me like that. I went and explained what Chunibyu is, keeping my not-so-good thoughts in mind. Ahem, you see, mumble, asterisk mumble. I concluded. So, it's not exactly a disease in the end. That made zero sense. Yuigahama summed up her understanding perfectly. As usual, even after my explanation, Yuigahama struggled to catch on. Or it might be that Yukinoshita is a strange one for grasping this early. Proving my point, Yukinoshita pondered. So you're telling me he is acting out a character based on a fantasy in his mind? I clarified. Basically yet. In his case, he seems to have used Ashikaga Yoshiteru, the 13th generation shogun of the Muromachi Bakufu, as his basis. It was probably easier that way, since they share a given name. Then why does he think you are part of his fantasy? Yukinoshita. He probably took Hachiman and turned it into the Hachiman Great Bodhisattva. The Seiwa Genji worshipped him fervently as a god of war. You have heard of the Tsurajayaka Hachiman shrine, right? I explained. I am surprised. You are quite informed. Yukinoshita. Well, you wouldn't be if you knew my rank in Japanese literature. You bet I am. I admitted with a smirk. Nonetheless, I continued. Anyway, at least his fantasies are based on history. There are a lot worse out there. You are saying there are ones worse than that? Yukinoshita. Yep. I answered with the utmost certainty. Then, as unwillingly as it may be, I moved away from her, picked up one of the papers scattered all throughout the room, and turned to Chunibyu. Anyway, what do you want, Zaimokuza? And what exactly are these papers? I cut to the chase. As expected. I didn't have to say a word for you to realize it. Truly, this is proof that there was value in our struggles against those hellish times. Zaimokuza spoke with quite a lot of emotion in his voice, but I brushed it off. You are not here, so we can help you cure this sickness. Yukinoshita questioned, while walking in front of Zaimokuza. Yukinon, run away. Yuigahama was loudly whispering from her hiding spot behind Yukinoshita. Ugh, poor guy, even the previous me was never told that to face. Zaimokuza averted his gaze from Yukinoshita and looked at me. Hachiman. I have joined you here to see if you will abide by your oath to grant our wishes. It is but a single, sublime desire. That guy, he was totally sweating all over every time Yukinoshita spoke to him. I am the one talking here. When someone speaks to you, you should try and face that person directly. But Yukinoshita did not have a normal person's sensitivity and spoke in a cold voice. She couldn't care less about his personal anxieties. Mwahahaha. By the havens. Zaimokuza. Additionally, stop talking like that. Yukinoshita added, not letting up. Zaimokuza fell silent under her gaze. You are killing it, Yukinon. Seeing Zaimokuza turn silent, Yuigahama praised her from her hiding spot. In any case, do you have some other problem that is more serious than your current mental illness? Yukinoshita. It's not really a disease, though. He trailed off. Oh, this guy might faint if this goes on. Hey, enough of that. I interrupted. Zaimokuza, as a fellow loner gym mate, I remind you that it really isn't a good time for you to try and stay in character. Just say why you are here, and if by any chance your luck stats are too low, we might help you. I stepped forward, in between him and Yukinoshita, and advised handing him the paper I had picked up. Hachiman. I shall do that. Zaimokuza responded with an overly relieved look. Yuigahama also glanced down at the papers scattered around. What's all this stuff, anyway? Scene shift. After a few minutes. Hachiman's POV. So, a manuscript for a novel. I questioned Zaimokuza. We picked up all the papers that were used as decorations for his entrances, one by one, and arranged them in sequential order. A novel, hey? I muttered to myself, remembering my thoughts of pursuing writing as a career before ultimately settling on the gaming industry. Coming back, Zaimokuza and I had only met once in the last gym session since the accident, which wasn't surprising considering it had only been a week since I started attending school. All in all, meeting him in person was a unique experience, but not frustrating or annoying enough to qualify as the worst time of my life. Shockingly, Zaimokuza turned out to be a decent gym partner. And perhaps even a better person as a human being. Yep, definitely a lot better than those fake ones I encountered. In the end, I would say we have a good friendship. But now that I actually think about his interest in writing, he might be more helpful than I give him credit for. If groomed well, that is. This suddenly turned pretty interesting. I hope he won't let me down. In that instance, little did I know what I was getting myself into. Indeed. That is a manuscript for a light novel. I am thinking of applying to a certain novel competition for new authors, but I have no friends, and so I have no second opinions. Please read it if you would. Zaimokuza asked. Sigh, that was dreadful. He told us something so sad, really sad, without a second thought. Yukinoshita sighed, catching her head. Aren't there any sites where you can put this kind of stuff up and ask for feedback? Just post it there. I said for his own good. I can't do that. Those people have no mercy. I would get torn apart, Zaimokuza said with his eyes shivering. But you know, Yukinoshita is more ruthless than all of them combined. I warned, looking straight outside the window as if I were introducing the final boss. Scene shift. After 5 minutes. Hachiman's POV. He left. Yukigaya said, her head peeking out from the small gap in the opened door as she scanned the corridors left and right. But no one paid heed to her claim, as Yukinoshita and I were already engrossed in reading our own materials. I stood up, closing my book with my pencil still tucked inside. Is it time to head home? I wish I could take my time, but with this added reading session to my already tight schedule, I had to leave if I wanted even a few hours of sleep. Hey Hiki, Zaimokuza was always like that? Yukigaya asked tentatively. As far as I know, yes. You seem close to him, so why don't you help him? Yukigaya's tone was gentle. She continued. I mean, you have changed a lot from the first year. If you can do it, then you know he can also change the way he acts. It's not that he looks like a bad guy. Must feel pretty awful having everyone look at him weirdly. I nodded thoughtfully, choosing my words carefully. Yukigaya, people don't change easily, especially just because someone else thinks they should. Real change usually happens when something major shakes them up, from their own perspective. Moreover, I did say we are friends, but we are not the closest. With a sigh, I added. And do you really think no one ever told him he was weird and all that stuff? Like hell, I bet he probably has received all kinds of advice, both sincere and mocking, and maybe even threats. In the end, he is still the same, and he will stay that way until he decides otherwise. All we can do is be there for him when the day arrives. I finished, slinging my bag over my shoulder, ready to head out. So you're saying, you gave up before you even tried, that's so like you. Yukinoshita has to go and say something. Yeah, I am leaving. Can she be any less obvious? At that moment, I knew Yukinoshita's criticizing words were fake. Just for the sake of appearance. In fact, I could sense that she was the one who truly grasped the meaning behind my words, but perhaps she struggled to articulate it, or maybe she just didn't know how to respond. Without looking back, just a few steps from the exit, I added. So, Yukigaya, don't stress about Zaimokuza. Besides, don't underestimate his skills, foolish finesse and tough hide. Believe me, with those two, he can get through any kind of blunderball events. With that, I didn't stick around for another moment. Skills and events. Yukigaya clearly didn't understand. Third-person view. Skills and events. Yukigaya clearly didn't understand. He meant that Zaimokuza doesn't just have a moron attitude. He is also a thick-skinned person, and with those, he can get through any embarrassing situations he might face. Yukinoshita clarified. He said all that? And you understood him? Yukigaya reacted as if a light bulb had just gone off. Yeah. Yukinoshita responded with a look that said, what's there to be surprised about? Suddenly, Yukigaya jumped in with another question. Yukinon. Hiki said people don't change easily. Does that, apply to him too? She continued. I mean, he is different from how he was in his first year. Do you think it was because of something too? I don't know. Yukinoshita replied softly. You don't. Of course you wouldn't. Yukigahama nervously corrected herself. Yukigahama, who was unaware of the actual fact of Yukinoshita's involvement in the accident, unintentionally brought up her memory of the day she deemed as dark into her consciousness once more. Author, well, as you can see, I skipped the explaining part of what Chiyunibiu is. And by any chance, if you don't know what it is, well, I really don't know how you are here. But here you go, I guess. Chinabi is a Japanese colloquial term typically used to describe early teens who have grandiose delusions, who desperately want to stand out, and who have convinced themselves that they have hidden knowledge or secret powers. Chapter 17, Unplanned Visit. Continuation. Third-person view. Suddenly, Yui jumped in with another question. Yukinon. Hiki said people don't change easily. Does that, apply to him too? She continued. I mean, he is different from how he was in his first year. Do you think it was because of something too? I don't know. Yukino replied softly. You don't. Of course you wouldn't. Yui nervously corrected herself. Yui, who was unaware of the actual fact of Yukino's involvement in the accident, unintentionally brought up her memory of the day she deemed as dark into her consciousness once more. Yukino and Yui had left the clubroom, following Hachiman's suit, and were on their way home. Yukinon, will you be at school tomorrow? Yui questioned, attempting to defuse the tension that had been building up earlier due to the serious issue while also aiming to keep the conversation moving in the right direction. It was pretty clear what she was trying to do. However, Yui, in her eagerness to spark conversation, overlooked the fact that Yukino had never quite been part of those inner circles. Yukino, not really accustomed to these kinds of chats, responded with genuine curiosity. Anything special happening tomorrow? Why would I skip school? Oh, no, nothing specific. I was just asking. Yui shrugged, trying to keep it light. As they continued their small talk, Yui's earlier question about Hachiman's transformation lingered in Yukino's mind. BURRRR, mobile notification. Suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by a phone buzz, intruding on her contemplation and irritating her further. Hey? Who might it be? She thought and scanned the message, which only fueled her sour mood. Yui, I will see you tomorrow then. As they parted ways, Yukino spoke. Yeah, see you. Yui replied, though she did sense the abruptness but agreed nonetheless, as they were approaching the spot where they usually split off toward their respective residences. After bidding each other goodbye, Yukino continued along her usual path for a while. Then, out of nowhere, she deviated from her usual course, opting for the left track. After going at a leisurely pace for a minute, she noticed a sleek black car parked nearby and proceeded to walk quickly in the direction of it. As soon as she arrived at the vehicle, she did not make any other announcements and immediately opened the rear door and slipped inside. When Yukino had finally settled down, she tilted her head to peer over the driver's seat and recognized Emiko, a young woman who was the person she had received the message from. How was your day, Ms. Yukino? I hope everything went well. Emiko greeted Yukino, making sure she was settled before speaking. It was fine. Yukino replied before digging into her own investigations. And what's the reason for this sudden, unplanned visit? She added further. Didn't I already make it clear that I will be going to my flat by myself? I apologize for that, Ms. Yukino. I am simply doing as said. Emiko replied, sensing Yukino's annoyance. Perhaps I didn't make it clear. I am questioning who this said individual is. Yukino continued probing. Ms. Harano is the one who informed me to pick you up, but I believe she was instructed by your mother. Emiko clarified. So, I assume we are not heading to my flat. Yukino sought confirmation of her suspicions. It is as you said, Ms. Yukino. I was directed to drop you off at the main house. Emiko confirmed with a calm tone. Then let's not delay. I have school tomorrow. Yukino's unhappiness was clear in her voice. But, despite Yukino's clear dissatisfaction, she acknowledged their compromise of waiting nearby instead of heading straight to the school. As the car sped along, Yukino broke the silence. How is Mr. Sana doing, Ms. Emiko? Emiko didn't reply immediately. Yukinoshita also didn't press any further. Mr. Sana, a 50-year-old man and Emiko's father, had been their employee for as long as Yukinoshita could remember. And he also happens to be the same person who drove the car that day. Months had passed since the incident. As you already know, Ms. Yukino, Mr. Sana was fired after that incident as a disciplinary measure. Emiko began to explain, emphasizing her words. It was obvious from this little talk that both the father and daughter are not on good terms, or at least that's what appears to be the case. Understanding that, Yukino interjected firmly. Uncle Sana wasn't at fault that day, Emiko. She said it with a rusty voice. I am sorry, Ms. Yukino. It was my mistake. I won't repeat it. Emiko immediately apologized, sensing her seriousness. The car descended into an eerie silence, broken only by the hum of the engine. Amidst the quiet, the third person in the car, present from the beginning alongside Emiko and before Yukino's entrance, finally spoke up. Exactly, Yukino. She said, clapping her hands together. You're right. Uncle Sana wasn't at fault that day, and neither was anyone else. And when I say no one, I hope you include yourself too. She continued as she looked affectionately at Yukino from the seat opposite her. She was none other than Yukino's elder sister, Yukinoshita Harino. Yet, despite being there from the start, neither Yukino acknowledged her sister's presence nor did Harino intervene. As for the reasons? Well, for Yukino, her sister's presence here was nothing short of an eyesore, somewhat justifying her lack of acknowledgement. She was also angered by the absence of any prior information about her sister tagging along, a detail Emiko skipped included in her message. And as for Harino, is a reason truly required for her? I mean, considering the eccentric person she is. But if we must name a reason, it's simply her mood. In that moment of being blatantly ignored by her own little sister, the emotion she experienced wasn't anger or annoyance, but rather amusement. Yes, she genuinely found amusement in the situation. Harino wanted to see how long her little rebellious sister could continue treating her as if she were invisible. Additionally, her fascination intensified when the reaction she anticipated upon Yukino entering the car didn't materialize. Although there was a fleeting moment of surprise reflected in Yukino's eyes, there was no immediate eruption or outcry. Ultimately, she clearly wasn't satisfied with the outcome. So, suppressing her urge to tease her sister, she remained attentive, listening keenly to her conversation with Emiko. Moreover, didn't I already say not to worry about Uncle Sana? Trust your big sis a little more, will you? Harino complained like an immature child, even puffing her cheeks a little. Yes, Ms. Yukino, please do not worry about that old man. He is already at the age of retirement. Emiko, the one currently in the driving seat, said to Yukino to lessen her self-blaming. See? Harino said cheerfully, while she also gave a thumbs-up sign to Emiko for the backup. She resumed. So stop worrying and let Uncle Sana enjoy his retirement days peacefully. Yukino fully understood Emiko's and her sister's words about not blaming herself. Honestly, she never blamed herself for what had happened. Well, she stopped, at least as time passed. She is not foolish enough to dwell and break herself over something that is totally out of her control. It is no lie to say that if it weren't for the new interaction with two individuals recently in her daily life, the whole incident would have slowly slipped her mind. Nonetheless, she is still not drained of any regret or guilt for them either. What bothered her was her inability to come clean about the incident with those two, as she knew very well that she was starting to get used to their presence and even enjoying it. It just feels like she somehow wasn't reciprocating their genuine kindness and friendship, which she had never felt before. It felt like she may be wronging them by keeping secrets and acting oblivious. Observing all this from the sidelines, Harino could easily decipher Yukino's inner debate. Wait. Yukino, don't tell me you actually met him. Nod. Yukino simply nodded in response, seeing no reason to lie. She knew she couldn't hide this from her sister for long anyway. You did? Harino exclaimed, her curiosity piqued. So, what kind of person is he? I mean, the little hero. Obviously, the word little hero was referring to Hachiman. Yukino offered few details. I was surprised he didn't ask for extra compensation for the incident. According to what Yukino knows, he actually rejected the offered compensation, which she felt odd because, from what she knows of Hachiman, he is the type to make the most of the situation. Nonetheless, Yukino's brief remark was enough for Haruna to glean a slight understanding of his character. He sounds like an interesting guy, she remarked with a wry smile. However, before Haruna could dig deeper, Yukino redirected the conversation to the current situation. So big sis, what's happening right now? Oh, right. I almost forgot about that. Haruna said, tapping her forehead in a cute manner and biting her tongue slightly. Dad returned back from. Yukino's eyes flashed bright as soon as she heard the word dad from her sister Haruna. Scene end. Chapter 18, One-Side Onslaught. Continuation. Next day. Hachiman's POV. Yawn, a long but soft yawn escaped my mouth as I parked my bicycle. Ugh, I am sleepy. Yesterday was really a tight schedule, from reviewing Zaimokuza's manuscript to completing a few of my own personal tasks, and by the time I finished reading the novel, the sun was rising. Phush. Swish. Just as I was about to turn and make my way towards class, a sudden movement caught my attention. A bag swung in my direction, aiming for my right shoulder. Swiftly dodging to the left, I narrowly avoided it. Gee, good morning, Hikigaya Hachiman greeted me excitedly, ignoring her failed attempt to ambush me. Noob. Sigh, few things never change. I muttered under my breath, internally shaking my head at her antics. That peculiar greeting, the Hiki nickname, and what's even worse is that I am starting to get used to it. Did you say something? Yukino asked, noticing my muttering. Shake. I shook my head slightly from left to right, denying her claims. I half expected her to press further, given my obvious lie, but to my surprise, she let it go. Instead, she observed, thoughtfully poking her cheek. Hey, you are not very energetic today. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake off my curiosity about her sudden appearance in the parking area. She usually doesn't come to school on a bicycle, according to what I remember. This couldn't be a mere chance. Is she waiting for me? Don't overanalyze, Hachiman. Some things are better left alone. Pushing aside my idle thoughts, I responded with a light sigh. Sigh, well, unlike a certain someone, I actually reviewed the manuscript. Yukino blinks a few times. Hey, who said I didn't read them? In fact, I'm so sleepy right now. Yet. I believe it. I replied, unconvinced. As Yukino hummed innocently, silence took over, maintaining a comfortable distance between us as we walked side by side. After a moment of quiet, Yukino broke the silence. Hiki, I wanted to thank you for yesterday. About what? I feigned ignorance. So here it comes, I suppose. I am still not good at handling this kind of stuff. You know, standing up for me when that stuff with Yumiko happened. Oh, that whole thing. I pretended to recall the incident just then. To be honest, I was pretty clueless about what was going on. I had my headphones on. So, the timing just happened to be right, and I only intervened because the food was really terrible. It's even worse than your cookies. I retorted, brushing off her gratitude. In truth, I don't like what I am doing. Standing up for her on my own accord when she actually didn't ask for help, and then not even accepting her appreciation. That's what I call a cowardly move. If you take action, you should own up to it, whether it brings praise or criticism. So don't bother. I stuck to my act, and fortunately, we arrived at our classroom before she could say anything more. For the first time since the start of my second year, I found myself sleeping through nearly all of my classes. Well, it's not like I was hell-bent on never sleeping in class. Anyway, after regaining my drowsy state, and once the 6th period was past, I decided to head for the clubroom. Pushing open the door, I was met with the rare sight of Yukinoshita nodding off at her desk. Good work last night? I called out, hoping to rouse her. However, her gentle yet rhythmic breathing indicated she was deeply asleep. As I gazed at her, with her black hair gently waving back and forth, her smooth, almost transparently white skin, her huge, teary eyes, her well-formed pink lips, I found myself entranced, as if I could watch her slumber indefinitely. In my mind's eye, I could already picture her with a pair of black cat ears and adorable wrinkles on her face, a whimsical image that made me smile. Damn, I need to capture this moment. I mean, like, right now. Unable to resist, I reached for my phone, only to freeze when I heard her speak, her lips barely moving. I am surprised. You actually have the nerve to do it. Attempting to salvage the situation, I stammered. Would you believe me if I said I was just checking my phone's camera? You know, like taking a selfie. Hey, does my phone even have that feature? Yukinoshita raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. Certainly not when it is from your mouth. Oh god, she won't file a case, right? Come on, even if it is the Yukinoshita Yukino we are speaking of, she's not that merciless, right? This one begs your pardon. Zaimokuza once again spoke in his usual fashion and entered the room. Haha. A small chuckle slipped out of my mouth, which I immediately controlled to not escalate into a total laugh. But, man, that was really funny. Cough. Seeing as everyone is present, will we get down to business? Observing that all eyes are on me due to my recent slip-up, I tried to act all professional to shift the topic elsewhere. Yeah, let's get over this matter. Yukinoshita added, while Yukigaya just nodded her head rigorously. Well then, let's hear your impressions. Zaimokuza docked himself into a chair and crossed his arms arrogantly. There was a sense of superiority coming from God knows where on his face. It was an expression overflowing with confidence. However, Yukinoshita, sitting across from him, looked unusually apologetic and started off with, I am sorry. I don't really understand these kinds of things too well, but... Zaimokuza responded completely calmly. I don't mind. Even ones, such as I occasionally wish to hear the opinions of the common folk. Speak your mind. Fu *k. I really commend this bastard's ignorance levels. I see. Yukinoshita responded shortly and took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. It was boring. In fact, it was almost painful to read. It was beyond imagination. That was the beginning of Zaimokuza being cut down into pieces started. Yukinoshita Yukino strikes. Strike 1, ufk. Clutching his heart. Strike 2, ufk. Oh. You're wrong. All the supernatural battle novels lately have used lots of furigana. Strike 3, hngHHH. But novels that don't have that kind of thing in them don't sell, so you have to. That is. Strike 4, pnyaha. Fell on both of his knees. Yukigaya UI strikes. Yukigaya probably saw that and pitied the poor fellow, so she seemed to try and think of some compliment she could pay him and said. Why you sure do know a lot of tough words. Knockout strike, You directly KO'd him. I muttered. Though her thoughts were aimed at encouragement, her phrasing totally fell into the category of being absolute taboo for aspiring novelists. After all, think about it. It meant that it was the only good thing Yukigaya could say about Zaimokuza's novel. And it was absolutely equivalent to being told that your work was not interesting at all. Well then. Hiki, go ahead. Yukigaya immediately ran away as she offered my turn to strike. GGNNGHH. Hachiman. You understand me, right? The world I created, this vast landscape of light and novel magnificence. You understand it, right? You understand this profound story I spun, and all these other fools cannot hope to appreciate. Right. Zaimokuza looked at me with eyes of absolute trust. I guess that, as a man, I had to answer truthfully here. Yet. I understood you all too well. I nodded reassuringly. I took one deep breath and spoke kindly. So, just who did you rip off to write that? HNGHH. BBBNGGH. Gurgle, Zaimokuza. You're the one with no mercy. That was definitely much more cruel than mine. Yukinoshita looked at me as Zaimokuza passed out, crashing right into the wall without moving a muscle. His empty eyes stared up at the ceiling, and a single tear streaked down his cheek. It was the look of a man who was ready to die. After wrapping up the review session, we all agreed to leave a bit earlier than usual today. Would you read my work again? Having replenished some of his HP by now, Zaimokuza faced me and Yukinoshita with fire in his eyes. Are you a complete masochist? Yukigaya quipped. Looking at him with a knowing smile, I asked. After everything we have said, you still have the galls to take another shot. Of course. That certainly was quite harsh criticism, making me think that I wanted to die. However, those words still made me happy. To have something I wrote for fun read by someone else, critiqued by someone else. That is definitely a good thing. Zaimokuza declared, with a grin on his face, that was more Zaimokuza Yoshiteru than a master fencer general. Fine, I will indulge in that literary madness of yours once more. I responded. Yeah, I could see some light. But before that, read this. I added, taking out a folded paper from my pocket. What is this, Hachiman? Zaimokuza inquired. After you gave us the manuscripts yesterday, and while I did read it, I thought it would be better if you could get to hear a few more opinions. You know, the more, the better. So I uploaded it to a small writer group website I happened to stumble upon recently. I explained. Is this the list of reviews? Yukino peeked, her expression a mix of curiosity and confusion. Not exactly. They're more like comments. And no, I won't explain the difference. I countered. Who even asked you that? I know the difference. Yukino retorted. I bet you do. Yukino, look, Hiki is treating me like an idiot again. Yukino complains childishly to Yukinoshita, who was walking beside us. While we were having our chit-chat, we failed to notice that Zaimokuza lagged behind, until we took a few steps and a distrustful voice reached our ears. Turning around, we found him on the ground, supporting himself with his palms as he clutched the paper I had given him with trembling hands. Agrg. Hachiman. How can you do this to your old partner? Did you forget how we braved those hellish times together? I trusted you. How can you? What if they criticize my story? I can't bear it. Is this what a betrayal is? It certainly is painful. One could notice a small teardrop formed in his left eye. Asterisk sigh, he is overacting again? Chapter 19, Writer Zombie. Continuation. Hachiman's POV. Agrg. Hachiman. How can you do this to your old partner? Did you forget how we braved those hellish times together? I trusted you. How can you? What if they criticize my story? I can't bear it. Is this what a betrayal is? It certainly is painful. Zaimokuza. One could notice a small teardrop formed in his left eye. Asterisk sigh, he is overacting again? Maybe it's time for me to give some hope to the supposed light. Yeah, I shouldn't give up this early. Although he's a bit lacking, he got possession, and finding another person is going to be a pain in the s. With that running through my mind, I walked over to him, while Yukino and Yukinoshita simply stood there. Yukinoshita didn't seem to care much with her usual indifference look, or at least that's what she looked like, while Yukino looked nervous, not sure what to do. In just a few steps, I reached Zaimokuza, who is still on all fours. Dropping my bag to the side, I sat on the floor in a hook-setting posture, my back facing him. Hey, writer Zaimokuza. I began, using a title to grab his full attention. It is likely the first time anyone has ever referred to him as a writer. As the volume of whining decreased, the results were evident. Taking it as a positive signal, I continued my pursuit. Since when did you start caring about what some random nobody is yapping or gossiping about you? If you are that worried about stupid things like this in the first place, cut the chunibia crap, idiot. If you are not, then stop whining like a kid. Getting up from the ground, I grabbed my bag with one hand and dusted off my pants with the other. Zaimokuza, now silent, looked up at me from the ground. What? Need help getting up? You want me dead, or what? Fucking, get up by yourself already. I said it with a dry and irritated voice, though I did pick up his bag. Standing up, he adjusted his glasses with one hand, the other folded around his body, and then burst into laughter. Hey. My old partner. You have opened my eyes. And there it was. He was back to his usual self. Annoying, but better than before. So, ignoring him, I walked towards our initial path, passing by Yukino and Yukinoshita. It took a moment for them to snap and notice I had walked past them. Wait, for us, Hiki. Yukino was the first one to call me out, or more like the only one. After a moment, everyone caught up, and we walked toward the exit quietly. Even Yukino, who usually talks a lot, was quiet. Zaimokuza, however, couldn't help himself. Hachiman, what is with this pen name, zombie? It is unholy and tarnishes my name. And I don't identify this at mail, zombie 342 at? Is it not yours? Do you really think I would use my personal account to post this garbage thing of a novel? Absolutely not. My repetition was already rock bottom in my offline life. What if someone thinks I wrote this story? So I had to create a fake @mail account. So, be more grateful. I had to work more than necessary for you. I grumbled. You are being awfully mean towards him today, Hikigaya. You are trying every trick to get behind bars. First the photo, and before I could even overlook that, now plagiarism. Shameless and despicable acts, one after another. Yukinoshita found flaws in everything, but I suppose that was her way of expressing herself. Who in their right mind would ever steal this story? I resorted. What photo? Am I missing something here? Hikigaya. Damn, how in the world did the topic of the conversation suddenly turn in that direction? I need to divert her attention quickly. But before I could come up with a reasonable and inconspicuous strategy. No, I am a good author. Zaimokuza. I do already attend write-in G session. Zaimokuza. Big fo ot. Zaimokuza. Literary supervillain. Zaimokuza. Care change? I don't wanna. Zaimokuza. Zaimokuza sobbed, as if each comment struck him like a precisely aimed bullet at different points in his delicate mind. This was enough to distract Hikigaya from the previous topic, but I'm not sure whether I should be delighted about it, as the reason for her distraction was Zaimokuza's heartbreaking whining. I just put out everything I had in me to lift his spirit not a moment ago, which, by the way, I didn't know I had in me to do so. I doubted I could pull off something like that again, especially since the skill I used before has a heavy cooldown period. When I was left with no other choice, I looked at Yukinoshita with desperate eyes, silently asking her to handle the issue. Are the review comments that bad? Gosh, what am I asking? Of course they must be bad. Hikigaya is already doing her best to cheer him up, but I don't think it is working the way it should be. Observing that Hikigaya's attempts weren't yielding positive results, Yukinoshita, with a defeated sigh, walked towards Zaimokuza and snatched the paper from his hands. Without hesitation, she recited the comments. Literary lunacy, the author must have moonwalked on the keyboard because the writing is so out of this world in a lost in space kind of way. I left before I accidentally stumbled into a black hole of confusion. Undead wit, if I had $1 for every cringeworthy line in this book, I could probably buy a better plot twist. This author needs to attend a writing session or something. Sasquatch sass, reading this book was like trying to spot Bigfoot, a lot of hype, a blurry mess, and in the end, you wonder if it even exists. Maybe the author needs to enroll in a How to Write 101 class with the elusive Sasquatch as the professor. Grammar ghoul, is the pen name zombie a metaphor for what reading this feels like? The grammar is so undead. It's like the commas and periods are participating in a perpetual game of hide and seek. Punctuation plague, commas, semicolons, and periods were on vacation. Mid-book menace, it's like the novel turned into a literary supervillain halfway through an unstoppable force of boredom that left me with no choice but to retreat. Plot retreat, ever considered a career change? I hear there's a booming market for professional thumb twiddlers. Your talent for dragging out plots might find its true calling there. Zaimokuza. Yukinoshita finished as silence filled the air, even Zaimokuza did not speak a word. How are all the comments so on point? Then the ever-clueless Hikigaya opened her mouth, expressing her remark on the comments. Yukinoshita and I both turned our heads towards her simultaneously, our expressions urging her not to utter another word. Isn't she supposed to be good at reading the room? Don't tell me she is doing it on purpose. She is doing more damage than those comments. Poor Zaimokuza. As Hikigaya stated, the views of the readers seem genuine and not fabricated. Furthermore, these comments, while stating nothing new, repeat the same mistakes we discussed in the club room. There is no need to be dejected by the opinions of some unknown individuals. Yukinoshita tried to console Zaimokuza in her own way. Now that I think about it, as Yukinon said, the comments are a lot less harsh for an online. Hikigaya began. Well, actually, I trimmed it down for Zaimokuza. They are much more toxic and harsher. No, they basically cursed him to death. I should have not opened my mouth. This time, both Yukinoshita and Hikigaya turned their gazes towards me. Thud. My pointless rambling seemed to overload Zaimokuza's already overwhelmed mind as he collapsed onto the ground. It wasn't anything serious. He was just asleep, I presumed. Yukinoshita and Hikigaya first looked at the now sleeping Zaimokuza and then at me, silently departing the scene without uttering a word. Well, Hikigaya did bid her goodbyes. As they left, my eyes turned somber, silently observing the peacefully sleeping Zaimokuza. It seemed like another night of not sleeping early for me. Chapter 20, Stickers. Continuation. Few days later. Gym class. Hachiman's POV. A few days had passed. Nothing had changed. Well, I have been getting a few stares when I enter the class in the morning since that incident. Other than that, nothing. Even my pairing in the gym class didn't change. The gym was the last class of the day. It was the 6th period. I had been paired with Zaimokuza. Hachiman. Who do you think is the most popular, most amazing illustrator out there right now? Just because I called you writer the other day, don't get ahead of yourself. Did you forget how pathetic you were when you read those comments? You can think about that after you win the prize. Fair enough. The bigger issue is where I should make my debut. Seriously, why are you assuming that you are going to make it? If it sells well, then maybe they can turn it into an anime and I can marry a voice actress. That's enough. Just stop it. Write the damn manuscript first, okay? My gym class conversations with Zaimokuza began to go more or less like that. That was the only thing that had changed. Evening, Service Club. Hachiman's POV. Hachiman. What is the meaning of this? Zaimokuza asked, as he scooped up a chair and slammed it outside the door. Didn't I already say that? I am putting some stickers on the signboard. I said, hopping onto the chair and taking out a packet of stickers from my pocket. Stickers? What is the description behind such childish actions? Dude, stop calling me childish with that mouth of ours. Well, counting your request, the service club completed 2 quests successfully. I said. So I decided to put something as a symbol of our succession. Ha ha ha. Wonderful. This great one now understands your thoughts. I agree with your idea of keeping track of such rare accomplishments as aiding this great one. You are indeed worthy of standing beside me. He proclaimed grandly. Stay patient. Hachiman. Don't get mad. You witnessed it for yourself the other day. He is not a lost cause entirely, not yet at least. After fulfilling his request, I waited exactly 2 days to give him time to fully recover from the wounds to his heart before checking on his progress. I had to sacrifice a whole precious Sunday of mine at the library instead of attending to my own important matters, just to assess his skills for myself, and to make decisions about my future plans based on it. And all I could conclude after this little experience of mine was that he can write all right. Forget about the content or context. I mean, he can write non-stop for hours, a skill many professional writers would envy. But if only what he wrote made a bit of sense. Perhaps that's too much to ask for. For now, I need to be patient and focus on improving his writing quality over quantity. Returning to the task at hand, I handed him a bundle of stickers and said, firmly. Shut your mouth and catch this. These are. Zaimokuza shuddered as he held a specific sheet of stickers in his hands, facing the sky, with absolute shock written on his face. The specific sheet he was holding is the only one that is in total contrast to other game-related and a couple chibi sticker sheets. The sheet has sticker images on it of a girl wearing different costumes, cat girl, bunny girl, maid uniforms, wedding dress, and more. The stickers themselves also appeared to be rare pieces of art to be available on one sheet and for weebs like Zaimokuza. They are nothing short of top-tier treasure die-cut stickers. So I am not surprised to see Zaimokuza's envious eyes. Hachiman. Where did you find such treasure? Hehe, maybe I can use this to help him make some real progress in his writing skills. I chuckled at his enthusiasm. Well, you can have that sheet for yourself. At my words, Zaimokuza's face lit up, and he exclaimed, hugging my legs. Thank you, Hachiman. You really are the best comrade I could ever ask for. Hey, idiot, leave me. I might fall. I reprehended. Forgive my disrespectfulness, Hachiman. He growled, his eyes narrowed into slits as he balled his fists and then bumped them together. Allow me to express my thanks in a more dignified manner. The man's rough exterior aside, I couldn't help but smile at his antics, even though they were far from conventional. What prank are you trying to pull off this time around, Hikigaya? A sharp voice cut through our noisy chatter. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Hoo, she is here. Nothing much. I replied with a shrug. Just some minor club stuff that needed the vice president's assistance. I turned and added, looking at Yukinoshita standing in front with her bag on her shoulder. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting an orange-pink glow across the sky that filtered through the trees. Insects buzzed lazily around us, while leaves rustled gently in the breeze. It was already a gorgeous evening, but with her presence, it became even more enchanting, a moment carved into my memory forever. So. Basically, useless stuff. She said it with a dismissive tone, rolling her eyes as she stepped away as if giving her silent approval. Well, it looks like she heard my conversation with Zaimokuza. Me, being the usual thick-skinned person I am, was also least affected by her sharp tone. I proceeded with sticking the first sticker on the signboard, taking care with each one to ensure it was perfectly straight and square. It was a picture of a gaming joystick. Thankfully, Yukinoshita waited outside while I was standing on the chair blocking the entryway into the club room. For the second sticker, I took out a different paper strap from my left pocket. It was filled with a wide variety of animals in their chibi form. With a deep and thoughtful look, I searched through it with the objective of picking the best one out. Then, with an expression of confusion, I called out to someone nearby. Yukinoshita. What do you think I should get for the second sticker? I asked, puzzled, as I showed her the strap. Suddenly, someone who didn't need to comment began his signature stupid and irritating laugh. Ha 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 ha. Hachiman. What? Why are you asking something so useless? Yeah, it is useless, and unneeded, and unnecessary, yeah, that's right. What is there for you to be bewildered about when the outcome has already been decided by fate? He pointed to a sticker featuring a 2D girl dressed in a maid outfit with a voluptuous figure. For a few moments, I was captivated by her SE*Y, cough. I mean cuteness. I felt a sudden, ominous glare directed at me, making me come back to my senses. I searched for the source of this hostile energy, and I discovered it was coming from Yukinoshita. She was not pleased with what was happening. SSH*T. Zombie. One more word out of you, and I will tear these apart. Ah! Zaimokuza, surprisingly understanding the source of my fear, retreated immediately. So. Why yet? I faced her again. Which should I choose? A cute baby elephant or lion? There's also this dog, or, cat. As soon as I said cat, a faint glimmer flashed in her icy eyes, yet nothing else changed in her expression. Why am I asking? Shake head, you are clearly not interested in such insignificant stuff. My bad. I forgot. Smirking inside, I acted tough, and I turned back around. Cat. Right then, a tiny whisper reached my ears from behind me. Did you say anything? Cat. Go with the cat. Okay. I chuckled. Author note. Honestly, I am not sure if what I am doing is right or wrong, but I guess I had to since, even if not now, at least in the future, I am planning to try to make a living by writing, which is like an almost impossible task, but I am gonna give my best shot. So, on my path to accomplishing that task.
Thanks for listening.